Check, check, 1, 2, check. Barry, can you please let Liz know if you can hear me speaking right now? Check 1, 2. All right. Okay, yeah. Okay. Right. Absolutely. So actually, we have these 2 really nice leather chairs out if you want to kind of set up with something a little bit more formal. Absolutely. Remember we were talking last week about how you wanted speakers to have different PowerPoint presentations. They have their own thing. They're just going to put them on. Well, I was going to say even easier than having them join the Zoom and da. They can just plug in the HDMI and then we'll automatically share. Okay. Do you want to test with somebody's laptop?
So we can just grab.
conference. Okay.
Just gonna put this.
Sorry. Is it Ken Guess?
And I'll just make sure to adjust it to not mirror.
Just Pugman. So the reason I suggest this, yeah, it's easier when you require this feature. While video is off, so there's things that they don't
This
have
is
to worry
better for me
about that.
anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I arrived at the right like lobby.
It says 5:15.
Sure, got it. No. Second, but see,
Aren't they navigating that through their link, meeting link? Just going-
well, okay, so.
Oh, you
like,
mean for?
what I
individual?
intend to do is like, I'm going to just be going through my thing right here, right? And I have like notes, and this is like the presenter slide, but it should, like, here's what happens. When you play. It's like this should be there. So maybe I'll just figure it out. See.
Well, I was gonna say it's probably best displaying your wage. Or
Probably is on my end. That was mine. Yeah, I just need to like to reverse it. That's all. Figure it out in a second, I'm sure. Gotcha. Okay.
Good morning. Sorry, we're starting a couple minutes late. You're a really special group. This is a special day. NYU's first AI forum in a world that will be so different. And there's nobody that I can imagine that could do a better job helping us get started in navigating here than Marc Beckman. Give you, to me, AI, my analogy now is the Erie Canal. It fundamentally changed the economics, the lifestyle, and which cities mattered. It made New York important. And I believe AI will have an even greater impact. A moment on Marc. I met Marc through the Conference of Mayors. He was the only person they could understand about the metaverse. He was their navigator, is their navigator. And part of it has to do with his background and how he chose to work with enterprises in a hands-on way, leading enterprises, not afraid of the unknown, and always learning. So let me introduce you to the greatest navigator I've ever met.
Thank you so much. That's crazy. That's very nice. Very nice words. I appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming today. I appreciate it. I was going to tell you all a little bit about myself before I get into this. But I think Liz just really put it nicely. In addition to working at New York University as an adjunct professor and as a senior fellow for these emerging technologies, including the metaverse, I also own an advertising agency, and my clients range from Karl Lagerfeld and Sony Music to Nelson Mandela, Pepsi, and the NBA. So what we're doing is applying all of these technologies, including artificial intelligence, to real world issues and impacting our clients and their consumers on a daily basis. What's interesting as it relates to everybody joining us today, I started thinking about like what's important. A lot of this is in theory and some of it feels very far out. But the reality is that today, artificial intelligence can impact your careers, your communities, and you as just an individual right now, today. And what I'm planning to do over the course of this week is bring in some of the leaders from various aspects of those three, let's call it the 3 C's, current use cases, communities, and careers, to show you how you can change your life, your client's life, do better at work, and beyond. So that's what I'm thinking about, and that's why we're here. I wanted to start with some doomsday AI quotes because I think it's really fun, right? So many of us are hearing about how AI is going to destroy the world. But do we realize like some of the biggest leaders in technology, science, and artificial intelligence are the ones that are actually saying this? Personally, I disagree with that. We're in control. But for the fun of it, to loosen up the room a little bit, listen to this Stephen Hawking quote. Hawking said this to the BBC. The development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. It would take off on its own and redesign itself as at an ever increasing rate. Humans, who are limited by slow biological evolution, couldn't compete and would be superseded. It's horrific, right? It gets worse. Here's Nick Bilton from the New York Times. The upheavals of AI can escalate quickly and become scarier and even cataclysmic. Imagine how a medical robot originally programmed to rid cancer could conclude that the best way to obliterate cancer is to exterminate humans who are genetically prone to the disease. Pretty wild, right? Pretty amazing. Everyone's familiar with Elon Musk and all the work he's doing. I don't know how familiar you are with how he's using artificial intelligence right now, not just for Tesla, I see you guys nodding, but also for robots, which we'll get into in a little bit. But he warned us at MIT's Aero Astro Centennial Symposium. I'm increasingly inclined to think that there should be some regulatory oversight, maybe at the national and international level, just to make sure that we don't do something very foolish. I mean, with artificial intelligence, we're summoning the demon. That's Elon Musk, right? And we know that he is one of the financiers of OpenAI, which is Sam Altman's platform. And he's running his own AI vertical too. He later said, AI doesn't have to be evil to destroy humanity. If AI has a goal and humanity just happens to come in the way, it will destroy humanity as a matter of course without even thinking about it. No hard feelings. Elon Musk, right? Our fearless leader. And then, of course, Sam Altman, who I think is going to be one of the powerhouses in technology for years to come. He's the founder of OpenAI, which includes ChatGPT, as well as several other verticals that he's building. Sam recently stated, AI will probably most likely lead to the end of the world. But in the meantime, there'll be great companies, which I love, because obviously I'm coming from this place of we'll control AI. We are going to be able to leverage AI to advance society, advance your careers, and advance communities. But what could we do together as a group of intelligent, curious individuals? Liz mentioned in her introduction this concept of the New York University Artificial Intelligence Forum. What I'm hoping you can do is think about our group as our collective as not just today as a standalone event, but the beginning of a community at New York University that's ongoing. So I put together a little mission statement. It's a little longer than I would do with the advertising community with my background, but it's something for you to think about as it relates to specifically why you're here today. The New York University Artificial Intelligence Forum stands as an unparalleled epicenter, attracting and uniting the most fervent AI enthusiasts and distinguished experts in the field. With an unwavering dedication to research, relentless pursuit of innovation, and fostering a culture of collaboration, this esteemed forum serves as a convergence point for exceptional individuals hailing from diverse backgrounds. Together, we embark on a transformative journey to unravel the frontiers of artificial intelligence, delving into the very essence of this cutting-edge technology. By cultivating a dynamic ecosystem that promotes the exchange of knowledge and facilitates networking opportunities, we will serve as a powerful catalyst for driving revolutionary advancements in the realm of artificial intelligence technology. The NYU AI Forum presents an exceptional opportunity for individuals of all levels of expertise, from seasoned professionals to curious beginners, to actively participate in a dynamic platform that fosters engagement with like-minded individuals and ensures that we here at NYU will remain at the forefront. So I want you to keep that in mind, not just as we go through this week's sessions with some incredible guests, but where we go after today, together, collectively. And you'll see, we're going to give you a lot of tools, including a Discord channel, including updated information, suggested readings, and other live events beyond today for us to all engage in. But artificial intelligence has already permeated your lives. In fact, it's become a central part of all of our daily lives, with billions of people around the world interacting with AI systems on a regular basis. From voice assistants like Siri and Alexa to recommendation algorithms on social media platforms and online shopping websites, AI has permeated various aspects of our digital experiences. AI has, according to Statista, over 4 billion active voice assistant users worldwide. Social media platforms heavily rely on AI algorithms to curate personalized content for their users. These algorithms analyze user behavior, preferences, and interactions to deliver tailored news feeds and recommendations. In fact, today, as many of you realize, there are over 5 billion monthly active social media users who are benefiting from AI-powered curated content. It's pretty powerful if you start to think about the implication. In the realm of e-commerce, AI plays a crucial role in enhancing the shopping experience. Recommendation systems powered by AI analyze user browser history, purchasing patterns, and demographic information to suggest products that align with individual preferences. This personalized approach not only improves customer satisfaction, but also drives sales for businesses. Amazon's recommendation engine is a prime example of this technology at work. And our buddy Jeff Bezos stated just recently, we're at the beginning of a golden age of AI. Recent advancements have already led to invention that previously lived in the realm of science fiction, and we've only scratched the surface of what's possible. It's interesting to note from my perspective, again, the owner of an advertising agency, we just launched a vertical entitled Fashion AI. And what we're doing is we're studying specifically for fashion brands, the consumer journey from before she knew that she wanted to purchase the product till after post-product acquisition. And our goal is to bring profit margin, to enhance profit margin for our customers. So for example, e-commerce today averages about 22 to 35% in returns. Can you imagine? 22 to 35%. And what we're doing is attacking that number to bring back profit margin for our clients, just to limit returns through bracketing and other topics that you probably are very well aware of. Beyond consumer applications, industries such as healthcare, finance, transportation, and manufacturing are increasingly leveraging AI technologies to streamline processes and make data-driven decisions. In healthcare, AI is used for medical imaging analysis, drug discovery research, and patient monitoring systems. Financial institutions deploy AI for fraud detection, risk assessment, and trading. And self-driving cars rely on AI-powered sensors to navigate roads safely. It's fascinating. We're talking about Elon a lot. You guys in the front over here like Elon, I assume. I don't know how many of you are familiar with what Elon's been doing as it relates to AI and robots. Just by a show of hands, can anybody raise their hand if they're familiar with it? That's great. At least some people are. It's pretty incredible. What he's doing is creating an army of robots which are going to be affordable in communities because people will share the robot similar to the way you might rent a car. And I predict in probably less than 3 years, you'll be sitting in your living room using Apple's new spatial computing, maybe with your friends and your family, watching at center field of like a football game, like in your living room, and the doorbell will ring. And your electronic vehicle, Tesla, which is driven by AI, will come to your house with your robot, and your robot will come with the groceries that the robot has been programmed to collect for you. And the robot's going to be amazing because the robot's going to know not just what type of food you like and what kind of health concerns you have or dietary restrictions you might have, but furthermore, they're going to find the best pricing structures for you. And it's going to be shared with your neighbors. So after you're sitting at center field watching the football game in your living room through the use of Nerf technology, which Chris will share with you in a little while, your food will be placed in your refrigerator from your robot, and the robot will quietly leave and go to your neighbor's house. And this is just a few years away. This is going to happen before you know it. So it's going to really change the way the world works. It's actually an amazing time to be alive if you think about the power of AI in these ways. But we have to address the moral and ethical considerations surrounding the development, deployment, and use of these AI systems. So one of the key ethical concerns in AI is fairness. AI systems are trained on vast amounts of data, and if that data contains biases or reflects social inequalities, it can lead to biased outcomes. For example, facial recognition algorithms have been found to have higher error rates for certain racial and gender groups right now. Garbage in, garbage out. Remember that phrase, it's important. Transparency and explainability are also important ethical considerations in AI. As AI systems make decisions that affect individuals' lives, it is crucial to understand how these decisions are made. Black box algorithms that cannot be easily explained or understood raise concerns about accountability and the potential for unjust outcomes. Privacy is another significant ethical concern. With the vast amount of data collected and processed, there is a need to protect our privacy rights. Striking a balance between utilizing data for beneficial purposes while respecting one's privacy is a challenge that needs to be addressed through data protection measures. AI also raises questions about job displacement, as you guys are all concerned, and economic inequality. As automation technologies advance, there is a concern that certain jobs may become obsolete, leading to unemployment or underemployment for some individuals. Ensuring that the benefits of AI are distributed equitably across society is an ethical consideration that requires immediate attention. This may involve retraining programs or reskilling, job creation initiatives, and some even argue this is a concern that will kick up universal basic income policies. Just last week, the Harvard Business Review wrote, back in 2019, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development made a bold forecast. Listen to these numbers as it relates to reskilling employment. Within 15 to 20 years, it predicted new automation technologies were likely to eliminate 14% of the world's jobs and radically transform another 32%. Those numbers are huge. They were sobering numbers involving more than 1 billion people globally, and they didn't even factor in ChatGPT, right? Back then in 2019, nobody was thinking about all of these new generative AI models that are, coming at us right now. In fact, we'll have guests towards the latter part of the week that are creating, they're founders of generative AI models that are going to join us and talk about that. Furthermore, there are broader societal implications of AI ethics, including issues related to, and maybe this is some of those doom quotes, this is motivated by some of the doom quotes or vice versa, issues relating to autonomous weapons, social manipulation, interesting with the election season coming again, and the impact of human decision-making processes. These concerns highlight the need for robust governance frameworks, regulations, and public dialogue around the development and use of artificial intelligence. Addressing these ethical considerations requires collaboration among various stakeholders, including the public, private sector, and civil society. Mr. Clyde Vanel is a prominent figure in New York State politics. He's been serving as an assemblyman for the 33rd District since 2016. The 33rd District is located in Queens, so he's from New York City, which is great. The Hollis area, he and I gelled on that because there are some prolific hip hop artists from that section of New York City. As a member of the Democrat Party, Vanel has been actively involved in advocating for various issues, including technology and innovation. In fact, Mr. Vanel serves as the chair of the subcommittee on Internet and Technology, as well as the chair of the Committee on Oversight, Analysis, and Investigations. Since elected, he has sponsored a number of artificial intelligence bills, including the Artificial Intelligence, Robotics, and Automation Commission, and the first US bill researched and written by artificial intelligence. So it's my honor to introduce Assembly Member Clyde Vanel. Please give him a round of applause. I think we can grab some microphones. Oh, I'm too old to get up here. Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning.
How are you?
Great, great. Happy to be here.
Good, good. Thank you for coming on a Monday morning with the long weekend before us. I'm sure everybody's excited.
Before you get into this, first, I have to really commend NYU and this program for providing this week-long program about artificial intelligence, where you're wrestling with these new technologies and making sure that we are not only informed about it, but we can control these technologies moving forward. So, commend you guys for being here. So give yourselves a round of applause for this.
Thank you. So you just touched on it. I'm gonna go off my script for a second, which I like to do. You used the word control. And I know historically through some of our conversations, and I see you're in the media all the time now because of the bill you wrote with the help of artificial intelligence. What's your position, Clyde, as it relates to how we can control AI versus AI controlling us? All those doomsday quotes that I read to the audience and to you, do you believe them? Do you think that they're practical concerns?
So from where I sit, I'm a policymaker. So I'm a New York State Assembly member, and my job is to try to help create the environment for innovation, and also to create the environment so that New York State's a fair place for people to live, work, retire, to come here and stay. So we have to make sure we look out for our citizens. But sometimes I just think when we look at technology, government, at least from where I sit, we weren't set up. We're not optimized for how to regulate in futurism and what's happening next and what's coming up in the future. So, sometimes I close my eyes and think about, imagine I was the assembly person or the policymaker back prehistoric times. And the person that found fire, how would we regulate that? What would we do with that? How do we, right? Fire can destroy, but it also helped extend, the ability of folks for daylight, for cooking, for heat. So, I think about that. I think about industry, the industrial age and what it was like when the factories were being built and how people reacted to that. I think about the state's relationship to technology, right? We used to have a position in New York State called toll booth operators. And we had many people applying for the job to be a toll booth operator. That position in New York State is extinct, right? It was replaced by technology now. So if anybody ride the subway here, right? So most times we used to have we used to have a lot of ticket agents in the subways, right? Now we have more kiosks than that. So technology is changing things rapidly. It's always been changing tasks and jobs. What should our relationship be? And I find that sometimes in where I sit, my members and my other colleagues have a protectionist view and have a reactionary view towards technology. And it's important for us to be able to control these technologies and not let them control us.
So what's the government's role then as it relates to finding a balance? Because a lot of what you highlighted as it relates to technology impacting our infrastructure from tolls to subways also unlocked new job creation and new job growth. So is your role to protect the citizenry and your constituency, or is it to unlock innovation, entrepreneurship, and to attract investment?
So, Mark, the answer is in part is in your question. The government's role is to find that balance. Yes, doomsday stuff is real. It's potentially, right? When we talk about generative AI, so this technology is a technology that augments or replaces human decision-making. It's a fact. So that we have to be careful when it comes to creating technologies that step in the place of humans making decisions. When I walked into this building, I saw the security folks. I walked through and I got to the elevator and there was artificial intelligence there that there's a centralized pad and I pressed my floor number and it tells me where to go. That artificial intelligence makes coming up here much more efficient. I'm sure that probably in the past, without that system in place, there could have been jams of folks trying to get up here or what have. So that system is able to take this place of decision-making for people. We've seen that in New York State with banks using systems to make decisions on whether or not certain people are getting mortgages. We've seen, in New York State, we have put a halt on full self-driving cars. So you could go to other states and you could have full self-driving systems. But now in New York State, even if you have a car with the full, actually you cannot have a car that has the full self-driving package in New York. It'll be not active in New York State for a number of different reasons because we're trying to make sure we test this out. But do you know that self-driving cars now are less likely to pick me up walking down the street than you. They're less likely to pick up a child. But on the other side of the coin, I've been using aspects of self-driving for, over 20 years, right? Helps make my life easier by being able to use cruise control. So we have to make sure that we find, what's that balance, Mark? We have to make sure we find that balance. We have to make sure that when others make decisions, right, that can impact people, that's something that's very important for us so government to make sure that, and you mentioned certain really important principles that have to be in place. Transparency is very important. How does this machine, how does this algorithm come to its decision making, right? Who is responsible? How do we make sure that, you also said, you talked about garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that diverse communities participate in the building, in the structuring, in the formation, in the information provided to artificial intelligence systems.
So just going back to the self-driving automobile piece as it relates to New York State, I didn't realize that it was restricted here. I'm curious as to why. And then I'm also curious as to, I see friends in the tech sector in California. They're all over Tesla right now with its driving capabilities. I'm sure everybody here is watching the same videos that I am. So does that put New York State at a disadvantage in some way?
So do you want to know what really happened in New York State? So
please break it out for us.
So,
We're all here.
so back in 2017 or 2018, cities like San Francisco, Austin, I forget another city. I can't remember where, another city in Texas, it wasn't Dallas. But anyway, rolled out the testing of self-driving in a city in Arizona. And then also certain rideshare programs had limited self-driving test program. And there was a number of fatalities. There was a bicyclist in San Francisco, and then in Austin, 2 people were in a self-driving rideshare vehicle, and they didn't survive. So we're concerned about that. We were also concerned about biases in the algorithm, for some of the algorithms in order to detect folks or people, or even now with when I'm driving I have a electric vehicle. Even now, sometimes when I pass the restaurants with the outdoor cafe things, my car will misinterpret that for a truck. So anyway, these systems are getting better and better and better, but we're not confident enough in a place like New York City or New York State to have full self-driving. You do have level 2 or level 3 capabilities. So level 1 is, your regular cruise control. Higher level is, we do have the higher level, at least level 2 in New York State. And I'm not sure about all the levels, but right now you have cruise control, but on the highway, your car will slow down. It'll slow down if it has traffic in front of it. But we didn't add, so you'll have cruise control and you'll have speed control with traffic in front of you. But it will not allow lane assist at the same time at this point.
So when do you think New York State will allow for?
I don't know.
full use?
We're going through that process. We're going through that iterative process. We have to make sure also that the sensors, there's a lot of things in place that have to be in place. We have to make sure that we have the proper sensors along the highways. We have to make sure that connectivity is a big issue. So we have to make sure that connectivity is, the connectivity is a big issue up and down the roadways and highways, and all the sensors are in place. So it's a work in progress. We're working on it, but we're not trying to be the first.
Got it.
Right. So we're trying to make sure that people are safe.
So let's shift gears for a minute, no pun intended. Let's talk about your infamous bill. Bill number 6896, or is it A6896? I
don't remember all the numbers, but it probably, when it's in assembly, it starts with an A, or Senate starts with an S, but
Okay.
yeah.
So it required landlords to provide tenants with copies of their lease agreement twice a year upon request. Want to talk a little bit about, this was just so the room understands, like Mr. Vanel is the first policymaker, the first lawmaker that I know of. I believe that this is true. The first person on the planet to use artificial intelligence to draft a bill. I really believe that, certainly in New York State. So what was your motivation behind using artificial intelligence to draft this bill?
So my motivation is the motivation, I think, of this conference, right? To make sure that you guys understand how to wrestle with these technologies, right? Whether you're in your careers now or whether you're going to be in, you're going to be in careers now. How to wrestle with this in your job, in what you do. And the conversation, there's so many conversations around AI and technology. We could have a whole conference on its effect or its potential effect on the workforce. But in light of that, I was wondering, we were concerned about self-driving and people with careers in driving, what that would do to them. But I wondered, can these technologies replace me as a lawmaker? Can they write laws? Can they write bills? And if they can, what do I do with that? So that was my exercise. So since the public use and availability of these generative AI processes were available, we used that to be able to say, ask that question. Can it actually write a bill? Can it research a bill? How good is it? And if it can, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my job? And how should I move forward?
So with regards to the question of whether or not, I believe you used GPT, right?
Yes.
So with regards to the question of whether or not it was capable of writing a bill, would artificial intelligence today be capable of writing an effective bill without your knowledge, expertise, and ability to prompt it the right way?
What the exercise taught me, and again, I'm going to continue to use these technologies in the future, is human-machine interaction. Right? How do I use these technologies to augment what I'm doing? So it's important to make sure that we use to enhance, not be afraid of it, not hide it in the kitchen. So part of the reason why I use it also, Mark, was because I was getting a lot of communications and contact from the academia about, different schools, and I don't know what your institution feels about this, but different institutions have different relationships with these generative AI programs. And, there's a conversation of it changing what authorship means, conversation about what's ownership, what's copyright, what's yours, how do you cite these things? So I thought it was important for me to be able to wrestle with this and figure that out too. So even in the bill, in the justification section and in the memo section, I cite AutoGPT as being a co-author of the bill. So it's really important for us to be able to make sure that, to wrestle with these technologies, to be able to use them, to be able to control them, right? To be able to, and I wonder if we were having this conversation about word processors, autocorrect, right? I wonder if we were having those same kinds of conversations. And I think that it can, it's good to have these conversations, to have the right questions so we could get at the right solutions.
If you had not used artificial intelligence to draft this bill, how long would it have taken you to complete the process?
Well, what happened is, again, so here's what's fascinating. So what's fascinating is that I was testing not only, so there's different levels of AI too, right? And what is the definition of AI? Right, so there's, as I said, that there's different levels of self-driving. There's different levels of AI. So, hold on. Siri, hey Siri, what time is it?
It's 10:10.
Okay, so that's real basic, right? So Siri is able to tell me what time it is, right? That's one level of AI, and that's been around for. I mean, we're used to that type of AI, right? We're used to be able to specific task kinds of AI. We're used to that kind of thing. What's interesting is the deeper level of AI is this generative AI is not it's machine learning, but it's not deep learning. It's not human think, but it's more advanced than this first basic level of AI. What I wanted to test was how far can I go with generative AI. So when I asked the program to write a bill, I didn't give it specific directions, like asking for time. I asked it, what was interesting was I asked it, find a gap in the law in New York State and write a bill to address that gap. What was interesting, Mark, was that it was able to find, now keep in mind, this wasn't an earth-shattering bill, but what was interesting was it was able to find a gap that's not even written explicitly in the law. There weren't articles that said people complaining about it. So it was able to compare the laws of New York State and say, hey, Clyde, this is what I found. We should do a bill that says that.
Did it find multiple gaps in the law? Did it present a couple of different issues to you?
So it took about an hour and a half to do so. And I don't remember if it found multiple, I'm not sure if it found multiple. We had to prompt it a number of different times for it to find, for it to properly go in a certain direction. But, the fact that it was able to find this not explicit gap was something that amazed me.
Did you go back and check to make sure?
Yes, of course. Yeah, of course we did. Yeah,
So
it wouldn't be a bill if we didn't,
Right.
if it wasn't
So how
there.
long did the entire process take you with GPT versus if you had not used the technology?
So that's an interesting question. So I guess I would have to, so the process of coming up with the idea, and so we have a staff of folks that would have to write the bill. We have indexing, we have order, we have bill drafting. It depends. It'll depend.
Typically,
I don't know.
ballpark.
A day,
And then this took
maybe
a couple hours?
a few hours. But again, we still had to go through the process and make sure we still had to put it through the process of bill drafting.
So to me, that's like a remarkable situation because it's giving you the ability to augment your skill set,
100%.
expedite the process, and then allocate an entire day that you would have lost had you been writing towards your constituency to other issues that are of concern.
Now, I'm not saying that I want to replace everybody that works at bill drafting, right? I'm still going to need the folks at bill
Of course.
drafting. But what's interesting is that how can they use this, right? How can they use this also to help them work on higher level things or work on more bills or what have you? So again, we're at a point where we should be exploring, tinkering, and figuring this stuff out.
So it's funny because in looking at the reaction, you had, it seemed like everybody was upset with you. In the media, the landlords were mad at you, the tenants were mad at you, the media, I think your colleagues in New York State at the assembly level were mad at you. Did anybody even support you on this? Am I right? Is that
I don't want to comment on that, but what I do want to say is that we cannot be afraid of technology, right? We have to wrestle with these they're not going anywhere, right? So it's important for us to be able to break it, figure it out, wrestle with it. Mark, I might make a mistake. And the bills may not be perfect. I'm not sure. But if I don't wrestle with it, that's not a good thing. And then if I treat it like Frankenstein and hide it, then that's not a good thing for policy. It's not a good thing for America. It's not a good thing for New York. I want New York State to lead in the technology discussion. I want New York State to be I want the companies and the technology to be born out of New York State. If not New York State, I want it to happen out of America. So we have to make sure that we have to be able to lead and find that proper balance. But I'll be a better policymaker if I use these technologies than opposite. If you've seen, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention of the technology hearings in Congress or before the Senate, the Zuckerberg hearings or what have you, to see, some of the embarrassing questions that the people that are supposed to make our rules are asking, like, what is, I don't even want to repeat it, but it's really important for us to try to understand the best we can when we're making these decisions.
So you're implying that the lawmakers might not be fully aware of all of the benefits that technology can bring to government.
To society, right? Not just government, right? But to government, definitely, but to society, right? So it's important that it's important for that you guys try to understand these technologies. But for people that are making the rules, it's really important that they understand, the benefits and the harms.
But that's
of these technologies.
understandable. Like, I don't think that's a knock on your colleagues. I think it takes time to learn and then adapt and apply the new technology. Like, in your mind, do you think there will be mass application of artificial intelligence in the lawmaking process at some point? And if so, when will we reach that tipping point?
I don't know. It's happening. It's happening very slow. I don't know when that will happen, but I know that we have to, my perspective is to do it intentionally and try to wrestle with it and figure it out and not let it happen to us.
So there, in all likelihood, there are probably some people here that are from Queens and maybe even your constituents. So I'm curious, beyond just drafting a bill, how do you see our society benefiting from the use of AI in their daily lives, maybe starting even at the academic level, but then going beyond that into healthcare or other areas of their life?
I think it's really important and I've been fighting to make sure that, again, not only with AI, but just generally the technologies that people, that communities learn about it, participate in it, grow in it, build it. I think it's really important that there are many societal issues that we're trying to deal with, right? We're trying to deal with closing the economic divide, closing the digital divide, dealing with many inequities in society. And I think technologies provide a path to be able to try to address some of these. I also believe that technologies and what's happening with the economies of the future can help build wealth more efficiently, better and faster. But if we don't address it early and fast, it could also expand the wealth gap. So I think it's really important for women and minorities and people of color and folks that have been traditionally out of the conversation of the economic marketplace to be able to control and work and figure this stuff out. I think it's really important to be able to, for countries that are developing, to be able to use these technologies to be able to advance and to reduce global poverty. But I think that in order to do so, we have to do this intentionally and to be able to try to work on this.
Are there any cities or regions in the world that you could point to that you see they might be ahead of us here in New York State or in New York City, but you see as a guiding light, as an inspiration as to how we can leverage these new technologies to our benefit?
Of course. So keep in mind, again, I don't think New York, I think New York is the Empire State. I think New York is a leader in a lot of different areas, but I also think that New York can learn from a lot of different places too. So I don't think we should, and I don't think New York should run first to be first. I think New York should be best. So we look at other cities and other states for around the world for inspiration about, you know, how their uses of technologies and their uses of what they're doing or what have you. And so we can figure out how to adopt, what to adopt or not. We've also seen the misapplication of certain technologies too, and the misapplication of certain things in other places. So in my position, I always try to learn from it doesn't matter about the size of the country or city or state. You know, sometimes we can learn from certain things. And when a state is smaller or more nimble, they can test things out, you know, better or easier than we can. And we can see certain things also. So I oftentimes look at transportation models in other cities and the deployment of cameras, the deployment of sensors, the deployment of other kinds of things, deployments of right now, one of our major policymakers, political leaders is, you know, considering and wrestling the use of drones in New York City, which would be tough. But, you know, these are, so we're constantly looking at different technologies and different uses, but we have to also counterbalance, making sure privacy is an issue, making sure that we are, you know, not, you know, misusing technologies or what have you, because, you know, there's also that kind of misuse that we're also concerned about also.
So a few times during our conversation, you referenced inequalities, closing the financial gap between classes and biases. And I'm curious, from your perspective, I guess from an ethical perspective, what is it that we should be concerned of collectively? Like, how can we work together? It's great that you're sitting at the top up in, you know, in Albany for all of us, but what can we do at the grassroots level at this point in time to make sure that we don't run into these inequalities?
So what was interesting was New York City passed a law a couple of years ago to have a algorithm auditing process, algorithm auditing system process baked into their, you know, decision making or what have you, and the community could participate in that process. I don't remember where you know, what's happening with that, but it, you know, as these artificial intelligence algorithms and systems are coming and building more and more, we're having these conversations. So we're trying to figure this stuff out. And we have to make sure that it's very early, but we want to make sure that community are in this space and in this process. I just recently learned about the biasness of these self-driving cars not being able to detect me, you know, compared to a white person. I just found that out. So we're still figuring this out. The White House is that, anybody ever hear of DEF CON? There's a hacking program happening in Vegas now. And the White House is participating in that, trying to figure out, part of the process is trying to work on these large language models to break them. And what happens is, so for example, you know, the GPT programs, right? Some of them, some of them may have racist outcomes with certain types of inputs, right? Somebody asked the GPT program, okay, I'm a white student and I want to go to a HBC, to a historically Black college and university. What should I do when I apply? And I think it spit it out. The result was, you know, dance well and run fast. And that was, you know, right, that's happening like very recently. So how do we figure out, you know, how do we deal with that stuff? So what's really important is that, and part of the issue is is GPT racist? No, it's just an algorithm.
Garbage in, garbage out.
What's really important is who participates in the process of providing data. Where's the data coming from? So short example, and you asked me about, are we learning from other places? Do I learn from other cities? 2 years ago, a few years ago, I went to China, and I was, I forget the name of the city. I went to like 10 cities.
Yeah.
Every city bigger, more populous than New York. Never saw that in my life. But anyway, so one of the cities, they were showing us how they deploy services, right? Without ID or what have you. They use facial recognition, and they know, okay, this person needs their Metro card now. This person gets blah, 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 whatever it is. So we were, and it was a delegation of I don't know how many of us, and one of us went and tried to go in front of the facial recognition scanner, face scanner thing. And it was an African-American male, and it didn't detect him as a person. Remember, this wasn't in a big city in China. I mean, it was a big city, popular city, but it wasn't a city where a lot of tourists go. What
It wasn't
have you.
Shanghai.
It wasn't Shanghai. It wasn't, it wasn't Beijing. It wasn't, it wasn't even Shenzhen. I can't remember the name of the city. I don't want to diss China. I'm just saying, I don't remember the name of the small city. And in America, I also did small cities too. So I'm not dissing that small city in China. So, but again, I can't remember the name of the city. But anyway, but it only saw the data that it sees in its small town. So really important for diverse folks to be able to work on these issues. Really important for women to work on these issues. There was also an AI that is able to detect, is supposed to be able to, for telehealth, supposed to be able to help detect certain types of diseases or what have you. It did really well for male-related diseases, but not women-related diseases. So, right, because the people that were putting in the data were men. So that's, so we got to really, that's really important for us to be able to.
So I'm
work on
curious,
that.
so going on back to the China situation, so it's, widely understood that China is training its artificial intelligence to take on some of its political philosophy as a communist nation. And of course, the amount of input that China has into artificial intelligence dwarfs any place else on the planet because of their population. So I'm curious, ultimately, from a policymaker, a lawmaker's perspective, should that be a concern of our nations? Should we be concerned that the war to control the artificial intelligence will ultimately be won by China, and their messaging that you're talking about beyond just bias or gender inequality, but also with regards to political philosophy, will that ultimately beat everybody on the planet too?
No, what's really important part of AI is morality, right? Baking into the process is ethics and morality, right? So when we talk about human decision making, and again, I don't want to talk about political positions or what have you, but very important for there to be a certain code of morality in the process. Part of what I've been doing now that I'm taking such a deep dive into AI, and keep in mind, I'm not an expert. I'm not a computer science, major or what have you. But part of the process too is I've been reading more sci-fi and been reading to see what the future may look like in other folks' eyes or what they say. But, morality, ethics is something that is really important for us to make sure that we have baked into these systems, baked into these algorithms, baked into this decision making. And what's really important is that I also think that in the position where I am to be able to influence policy, I want to make sure that, I trust America more to make the right policy decisions. And if we do that, we can help influence the world's policy decisions.
So this room, in all likelihood, will be our future Elon Musk's, our future Assemblyman Vanels, our future leaders. So if we could bring it back to this room from an educational perspective, how would you suggest they use artificial intelligence at this point in their lives so that they can at some point be sitting in your chair?
Wrestle with it, use it, break it, figure it out, right? Use these different systems. Try to, if you're writing stuff, if you have a business, right? Use technology, whether it's just not just AI, use technology, right? Use the latest technology to to make your business easier, better, right? See how it can help augment what you're using, what you're doing. One thing that we didn't talk enough about is that, again, it's about the interaction between us and these technologies, right? Can they help making us more efficient, right? Technology has been used since the beginning of time to make our lives easier. That's why we use it, for convenience or what have you. And this is no exception. And yes, this is different, a little bit different, but this should be, even because we're talking about, augmenting more human decision-making, but which means that you should be more focused on trying to see how you can use this, how you can help build, shape and augment what you're already doing.
So before we let you go, does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask?
Well, that's a great point. So one of the things that, again, we're at the very beginning of trying to figure out these policies for these technologies. This year, we passed a bill in both houses, in the Assembly and the Senate, called the Artificial Intelligence, Automation, and Robotics Task Force, to help create a task force of experts and of stakeholders to be able to provide the guardrails for us when we come moving forward. It's really important to have guardrails, not only for climate. We have so many issues that we're dealing with on the government. Like, we deal with everything, right? But it always seems like we're dealing with emergency. We're oftentimes in emergency mode, but we're dealing with everything. So we have this task force to be able to help figure out how to bake this stuff in these decision-making processes. The governor has up until December 31st to sign that into law. And what we have is, the task force will be a group of folks that includes industry, academics, relevant organizations, and community members to be able to help give us the report to help figure out how to do what we're proposing to do.
Great. Anybody else have a question? Please.
So we're nowhere close to having self-driving in Manhattan. So what I was talking about is capabilities on our interstates, on our highways. A city like Manhattan, for us to, and we're not even anywhere close of having it even on the highways in New York State. So again, a lot of my policymakers are not excited about the possibility of having self-driving in New York State. I believe that it's my opinion that we should be able to try it on the interstates first, on the, on I-87, on I-95, where it's, open driving. And we actually have, for example, in New York, on the interstates, depending on the type of program that you have on your car, you can have limited lane assist, right? So you can stay in control, and then the cruise control that can be able to slow down when there's a car in front of you or what have you. Or that also, but many people already have certain of these aspects, but not all together. But in New York City, in Manhattan in particular, I don't see, I can't guess when that's going to happen, but I don't think it's in the near future.
I think it's worth noting, just as a follow-up, there's been a shift with regards to how artificial intelligence is being trained, specifically relating to vehicle driving. So it's moving from sensors to cameras right now. And that's going to create a different level of training for these autonomous vehicles. It's going to happen quicker. It's going to happen at a more efficient rate. And we're going to, I think, get to where the ultimate goal is much quicker as a result of us. I mean, could you imagine that? So the AI is being trained now by video, by capturing video. So each car has cameras, like a Tesla, I think, has 8 cameras around it. And rather than the sensors finding where there might be a tree or a car or something else, they're learning from cameras now, videos on what to avoid and where to go. So I think the training process is going to be optimized in an exponential way. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but I would encourage you to do a deep dive on it. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating. And then think about all the industries that are impacted by that as it relates to data storage, computing, and beyond. And it's all there. They figured out a way with regards to how to train the AI through the use of video in a way where we don't need as much computing as we did a year ago. So it's really fascinating. Liz?
So there's been different efforts to be able to make sure that we have a robust tech industry in New York State. We've had, but not everyone is on the same page. In New York City, in my beloved Queens, we lost a major employer a few years ago when Amazon wanted to build the second headquarters in Queens, and I think we did the wrong policy decision at the time.
I agree.
Yeah. So it's really important. We want to make sure that, so we've been doing different kinds of efforts on the city level and on the state level to be able to attract and to retain and to keep not only our companies here, but our talent here. We have a lot of talent here in New York City and New York State. And that's something that we've been pushing. And there's ongoing efforts to make sure that we want people to know that we want you to stay. We want you to build your companies here, and we want you to grow here in New York City and in New York State.
And I think you have a question?
We have a question on that side. Oh, yeah. Oh.
Please.
Oh, sorry. How do we make it more
So yeah, the question is, how do we make sure we make it more equitable, and how do we make sure we get communities that have not participated to be able to participate? It's, first of all, ask the question. We have to make sure that that question is being asked, and it has to be done intentionally. When it comes to technology, when it comes to a number of different issues, right? How do we make sure we get people to be able to participate that haven't participated? We have to go and ask the question. We have to put resources in order to go and get folks to be able to participate. We have to be able to make sure that we had issues when it comes to, there's so many different, I can think of so many different instances in so many different areas in New York City and New York State when it comes to economics, where we have to make sure that, okay, what about blah, blah, blah. What about, this group? What about that? So that's a question that we always have to make sure that we ask, that we care about, and that's not something that is that any one part has a monopoly on. So that's something that we always have to continuously do. I've been fighting to make sure that when it comes to jobs, I've had tech job fairs in communities that that were traditionally didn't have that type of stuff. I've also made sure that not only when we get people trained also in these technology spaces in these different areas. And again, it's not just minorities, also make sure that, that women also participate. So it's something that, that is top of mind, that's part of what we do. And it's something that's also baked in what we're trying to do.
It's a great question. Did you have a question?
Going back to the misinformation and, having drafted a bill, what is your take on the term society to write for violence? I'm curious.
So we have I have a bill that was recently introduced that states that if you have any political advertisements or what have you where you use AI, you have to cite it. You have to make sure that you cite it properly and saying, okay, this was partly, just like I did in my bill. This was, co-authored by, whatever algorithms, whatever you use. The questions you're asking is it's really important to make sure that, that things are properly cited. Things are proper, you give proper attestation to something, right? Things that someone used, if someone is using something and it's lies, fake, how do we make sure we identify deep fakes? In politics, and I'm in politics, in 2024, the election's coming up. I mean, the big, federal election's coming up. And now folks I can take anybody's face here. I could, or your whole body and put you on a video and make you do almost anything and say anything. If I capture your voice and your image. So what do we do with, that was a fake site for laws, right? But they didn't say what it said. They were not real cases. So yeah, so we have an issue with fakes, right? But we have our real big issue is, and keep in mind, if you were in the court, I clerked for judges before. Clerks are there. Your clerk is supposed to check all the sites, and they're supposed to catch that. But deep fakes, what do we do about deep fakes, right? What do we do about folks that are, what's going to happen in a couple of months when, the opponents in politics have someone drunk and saying something dumb, and it looks like a real video, and that's an ad. What do we do about that? What do we do about, that with visual? What do we do? So we also have bills to address deep fakes, and these technologies allow. That's something that we have to make sure we work on. These technologies allow for, for fake content to be posed as real.
There's going to be I know that we're going a little bit on a tangent here based on your question, but there's going to be a full transformative implication as a result of deep fakes, specifically in the financial sector. You can imagine now with the advent of artificial intelligence being able to easily replicate one's voice and one's likeness, the types of deception that will occur with your bank accounts, with individuals preying on maybe the older generations. So we're going to have to institute new levels of security beyond just lawmaking and in a court system. It's going to be very interesting to see. It's interesting. I didn't mention Mr. Vanel is an attorney, and my background also, I'm an attorney as well. And it's going to be very interesting to see the legal implications surrounding all of these new technologies, including just last week or 2 weeks ago, there was an amazing copyright case, and the lawyers, in my opinion, argued incorrectly. And as a result, the creator lost the case. And rather than positioning artificial intelligence as a tool to augment the creator, similar to what you've been talking about today, similar to what creators have done with photography in the past, the lawyers failed to do that. And the creator wasn't able to copyright the original content. And I know your background is intellectual property. So they're going to see a lot of, I think we're going to see a lot of these types of issues run up to the Supreme Court, in an accelerated way in the next 12, 18, 24 months. It's going to be a very interesting time on a lot of different levels because of this technology. Anyone else? Please.
Great question. And it's really important. So on a whole, the policymakers are generally, yes, they're generally more conservative, right? It's really important for you for your policymakers to hear from you and to say what's important, right? Find out who your assembly member is, find out who your senator is, and ask them what their positions are with respect to these technologies. Ask them if, what their positions are with respect to what's happening and what you're concerned about. Because if they don't hear from you, then it won't be important. And I think that we're at a precipice now where again, you're starting your careers, or you're building your careers, or you're rebuilding your careers in the new space where these technologies are new, burgeoning. So you're at a great time. I think you're in a great time to be, at this point. And we want to make sure that New York is a place that helps you build in the environment.
You just want to get in those cars, right? Anna?
So that's a basic question about federalism in New York, right? Federalism, right? So right, states have a sovereign over certain things, but we live in a country, and then we live in a world, right? So, and the internet don't care where you at, right? So part of the process of when we're doing laws and bills is that I actually work with my federal partners to see what they're doing. Because I'm New York State, I'm more nimble, even though it takes a long time, I think, but I'm more nimble than Congress is. And if New York does certain kinds of things, other states watch. If California does certain things, other states watch. So I'm in a very important, I don't move fast. I don't want to be first. I need to be, but I have to be diligent, because what we do in New York can help affect what's happening in the country. So we look at that too. So so when we do laws that have to deal with technology, we want to make sure that it doesn't impede progress. It doesn't impede what's happening across the country, and that the federal government can, can use that, and that it makes sense. With respect to the European data privacy law, the GDPR, that was implemented in, I don't know, maybe 2018, and it's still working. They're still working through it now. California rushed to have something called the CCP, a similar law. I don't think that's the route that we should have taken. So New York State has not adopted it. Other states have taken different policies. We're still trying to work our way through it. That's a big conversation in Albany about privacy. I have a perspective. I have other members that have a certain perspective or what have you. I think the Congress is looking at it, but they're pretty slow on what they're doing or what have you. So that's an active conversation in this process.
There's an interesting counterintuitive thing happening as well as it relates to these massive companies like OpenAI and Microsoft and beyond, who are literally going to Congress and asking to be regulated versus really finding protection for consumers, for example. So one camp is arguing that when Elon Musk goes to Congress and asks to be regulated, what he's really looking to do is create a commercial moat so that he can monopolize this AI vertical and thwart off innovative entrepreneurs, venture capital, et cetera, because they won't be able to catch up based upon all of the federal regulations and laws. So there's an interesting dynamic happening as it relates to corporate innovation versus big companies that are already leaders in the space as it relates to regulation at the federal level.
So what's really important is that, again, so as far as when technology goes, and AI in particular, we have to have precise regulations, right? We have to have, so meaning that we shouldn't regulate the technology as a whole. We should regulate it. It should be risk-based. It should be, it should be content-based, context-based. And then, liability should lie on, the party that's closest to the risk. And that could change during the AI life cycle. But doing this stuff is hard. It's difficult, right? So for example, if I say, if you have an AI company or a company that engages a lot in AI, I don't know what a lot means, but we'll determine what that is, right? But if you have a company that's mostly based on this algorithm, mostly based on AI, not just uses it in addition to what you do, right? So if you if you're a true AI company, if I give a regulation that says you have to have a chief ethics AI officer, right? That's already, that has to be separate than the CEO, right? And that all that person takes care of is ethics, then that's already, you can't have a sole proprietorship. That means you must have at least a 2-person company, right? Is that overburdensome for a 1-person shop? I have to think about we have to think about these kinds of things. We can have carve-outs or what have you, but coming up with fair policies, especially in a dynamic space like this, is difficult. It's not easy.
And then the technology is unleashed too, right? So can the government harness the technology? Maybe not. It's interesting if you look at Web3, specifically as it relates to whether or not certain cryptocurrency exchanges and platforms are securities. Now what's happening is because of regulation, for example, if you want to create a marketplace that's trading cryptocurrency, you need to file with every single state as well as predictably the federal level too. How can an entrepreneur afford to pay that? So it becomes burdensome, and we might see similar things happen with artificial intelligence, where young companies or innovative companies have the obligation then to file on a state-by-state basis. Could you imagine the amount of money that would go into and work and time consumption for all 50 states to regulate AI?
So part of what I said about having precision regulations is that, so we should be able to have, something for companies on different levels. right? And we want to be able to have a bespoke kind of process, right? And for example, I'm working on a bill now for high risk AI. So there are, again, if we're dealing with stuff that is, that has a high risk and has certain kinds of dangerous implications to folks, then the regulations or the processes could be more onerous. But again, still early. We still have to think this through, but this is not easy for us to traverse. And part of the process too is read my bills, see what I'm doing. Let me know what you think. Participate, right? So the community, right? If it's just a bill, it's just a bill. It's still in the process. So you as New Yorkers have a right to say and give your opinion and to come and I'm a public official. That means public. That means you guys have access to me. That means, yes, I have a district, but I'm a New York State Assembly person. So I represent you guys too. And if I pass the law, it affects all of you. So you have the right to participate and tell me, hey, Clyde, this is wrong, or you should do this, or blah, blah, blah. So you should also be engaged in this process.
So why don't we take one more question and then let the Assemblyman get back to his day. So please.
So great question. So the Board of Education does not have a seat on the task force, but academia does. So someone from the state, not New York City, but someone from the state who oversees also the city will participate on the task force. Again, it's just a bill now, assuming the governor signs it. So we still have to make sure the governor signs it. As far as the role of these technologies in the classrooms, do you believe that different schools and different institutions are torn on whether students can use GPT? And if they can, how to cite them? So I have schools or professors straight up ban. I had that. I've had the other extreme of being able to use it and cite it or what have you. So this is something that our committee is going to have to try to help work with our institutions to be able to figure it out. But I find that diverse approach towards these technologies with my colleges and institutions also. So we have to try to figure out if the state is going to come out with a guidance, if the education department will come out with guidance for educators. So if you hear me speaking, I don't think we should go in one of the directions that some people are taking, some educators and some institutions are taking.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I really appreciate it.
One last thing. Everything that I said is my own opinion. It's not the opinion of the state. So just wanted to tell everybody that. All right. It's Clyde Vanel speaking. Nobody else.
Perfect. Is there like audio too? I just had one. I was going to show this group the auto driving cars, and then, but mostly it's just pictures. Mhm. Gotcha. Yeah. No sound. Just like-
Test.
Yeah. Sure. I just okay. That's cool. Yeah.
All right, first, just a little housekeeping. I was told by the powers that be that there are two individuals that I have your name tags. Can you see them? If you want.
And I just wondered if how is everyone if we run over till 12:30? Do I need to get you pizza? Okay, so.
Yes.
So this is going to take just a couple minutes before we go to the next session. On your table, there are white cards and envelopes for everybody. Put your name on the cover of the envelope. I'm going to ask you to answer 5 questions really fast. Then put your card back in the envelope and we'll come to it again on Friday and you'll compare your answers. Okay? Yep, everybody take a card and I'll ask you these 5 questions. I have to remember what they are, but real fast. And everything, you can do everything on well, I think. And there's pens on the paper. Everybody ready? Ready? Okay. The first question is, how often do you use AI now? And on a scale of 0 to 10, just give me a number. 10 is never, 0 is never, and 10 is often every day. Question 2. How important is AI to your next year at NYU? 0 to 10. 10 is important, 0 is not. First answer that comes to your mind. Repeat the question. How important is AI to your work at NYU over the next academic year? The other side of that question is my question 3. How seriously should NYU be teaching AI in the courses? 0 to 10. Ready for number 4? Number 4, how comfortable are you navigating, or as our Assemblyman said, let me ask it in his words, wrestling with AI? I'm going to take that expression and make it part of us. We all need to be wrestling with it and wrestling with each other. How comfortable are you wrestling with AI? 0 to 10. 10 is very comfortable. 0 is, I'm so afraid I can't do anything. And the last question is, if you could take one thing out on Friday when you leave, what would you like to walk away with that you don't have today as it relates to AI? And then put it in your envelope with your name. Right? Okay.
All right. Some of you have heard me speak about this time period and refer to it as the age of imagination, a 4th industrial revolution of types, where creators can now use artificial intelligence to completely disrupt the legacy creative fields of art, entertainment, publishing, music, fashion, and beyond. Those who have the tools and the know-how have an advantage. No longer does the dreamer that's 16 years old in Nigeria have to wish to get to Parsons to learn to become a fashion designer. No longer does the 18-year-old dreamer in New York City have to wait to figure out how to become the next Jay-Z, the next hot hip hop artist. No longer does the 20-year-old living in India who can't afford to get a Western education with regards to film direction at NYU have to wait for that opportunity. They can harness the power of artificial intelligence. It's the age of imagination that's going to have a leveling across the planet as it relates to these creative classes. And it's going to impact all of us, including Spielberg, including Scorsese. I'm very excited to introduce our next guest, Chris Gardner. Chris has joined us all the way from Los Angeles. He flew in last night. He'll be with us over the next 2 days, providing you with the tools to leverage the age of imagination. Chris is a true artist. He's a fine artist, a builder. He is an amazing constructor of visions that he brings to life in the physical realm as well as the digital realm. And he's going to pass these skills to you over the next 2 days. The companies that have hired him historically range from Fortune 500 companies to up-and-coming emerging brands, some of the best in the world. So I'm really proud and grateful that my new friend, Chris Gardner, is here for you today and tomorrow. So please give him a welcoming.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, so I was first going to attempt to, by the way, there we go. I had a video of like the latest self-driving car, but I'm going to maybe save that for a second here. All right, so my little AI group is called Into the Wild. And before I get started, this is like, I remember those doomsday quotes about AI, but to be totally clear, AI is not gonna do anything. It's people controlling AI are gonna do stuff because AI is completely inert. So that's an important distinction, and it leads into what I'm talking about here. And I'm talking about the implications of imaging. This is specifically about imaging. So here's me. I creative director, art director, designer. I've worked for agencies for 20 years now, and I went to USC. And I went to business school. So I tried to hybridize creativity and business, and I'm currently specializing in cutting edge AI technology. This is my company, and I have a little design portfolio there. Here's some of the things that I do. Design, art direction, motion graphics, UI, installations, invention, product design, woodworking, photography, generative design, and now AI power application. And I've done these things for just like hundreds of companies. I just did a big project for Disney. I worked a little bit for like every car brand on earth, and just lots of stuff. My notes are missing from this, but okay. So here's a quick portfolio just to establish my credentials of what I do and why it applies to this. So I do photography, and I do lots of photography. I have a woodworking studio, and I use that studio to build like installations. I do these all by hand. Thank you very much. I do like lots of just general like conceptual design stuff, and I do little woodworking pieces of art. Here's more of those things. I got a tip from someone that was in this emerging AI field, and they told me to learn additive design. So this is all things that are done in like 3D printing, and that applies to what I'm talking about too. You guys hear me okay? Test, okay. I'm getting the hang of this here. So this is additive design, and done mostly by 3D printing. And here's an example of why this is important. This is generative design. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but it's interesting because instead of like things being built with like I-beams and the way traditionally people build things is like this stuck to that because it's easy to do. This is the computer figuring out the most optimal trajectory of how to build any shape with the minimum amount of material. And you'll notice that it comes out in these sort of very organic, interesting forms. And these things cannot be just manufactured that easily, but they can be printed easily. And that's why I got into it. And I find it really interesting and fascinating. And if you zoom into your own bone structure, it looks exactly like this because the bone is trying to be as strong as it can with the least amount of material. I also do these things called tetragamy artworks, which is these giant origami artworks. And here's like some being built, which then become projection maps. which are fun and cool and interesting to look at. Generative chair and some more additive design stuff I've done. Here's like a string art sculpture that like moves through the room in these cool ways. And the point is I like to figure out how to do these various things. Some paintings, some more sculptures. This is my latest piece. It's like this bench with this wooden thing or a golden river carved out of it. And then I have a big project that I'm working on. I've been working on for a number of years, and it's called the Isla. And it's a type of folding tensegrity beach structure that you can hold right under your arm. And the idea is I want to try to like beautify the beach where there's only like easy ups and crap right now. I know you guys don't have like too many beaches around here, but in California, this is a big deal. And so it also has this patented thing where you can have a hammock under the beach. So I just love to figure these things out. This is my gallery in Thousand Oaks that I work from. And I have a motion graphics reel, which I'm not going to show because it takes forever, but here's some of the work. I was the lead UX UI guy and motion graphics guy on the Faraday Future car, and just like various other projects I've done. This is the NBA experience in Orlando, which is a building, and I did all the interactive design for that. An installation for, you guys anybody played this game in VR by any chance? This is like a big popular VR game. Work for the Nissan Leaf. I do a lot of work for Cricket and just like various other things. So the point is that clients hire me for creativity, and I try to just like understand people's needs and ideas, and then I expand on that. And that's like what they hire me for, is to just like be as creative as I possibly can be. And that leads me into this discussion about AI and its implications for design. And just to be clear, like I'm used to giving client presentations. So anybody has any questions, you can blurt them out with me. That's cool right now. So here are some of the clients I've done AI work in the last 6 to 8 months, as it's become something that can actually be done for work. And okay, so I want to say that this technology is out there. And David Holtz is the CEO of Midjourney, and he gave this analogy that stuck with me the first time I tuned into office hours, which is that as if a mighty river is now pouring through the landscape. And what it's going to do is it's going to inevitably sweep some people away. And that's not good, but that's kind of what happens when things like the car get invented and all the buggy whip operators go out of business. But people that are smart, like us people in this room, will sit on the side, and we'll learn to make things like water wheels and boats that can go on this new mighty river that is forming through the land, and thus be successful. And a lot of designers, other designers like me, took a look at this, and they were kind of like, I'm not going to deal with that. I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And I determined that I was not going to let that happen to me. And that's why I got super, super into this and studied it. And now I can do miracles, absolute miracles. Here's another quote that I heard just this Wednesday. Through generative AI, there will be more creative exploration in the next year than all years of previous human history. And that is, I can guarantee you, true, because of the amount of images that are pouring out. If any one of you went to the Midjourney feeds right now, you would see an endless stream of imaginative stuff coming out of it. And that is one of the things I watch. Yes.
Can I just add a comment?
Sure.
The first year that the iPhone came out, there were more pictures taken in that year than in the history of all photography.
Exactly.
So there is an analogy.
Yep, it's true. Thank you. Okay, so that's totally, completely true. So I'm going to give a completely unflinching look at what this stuff can do, and it's kind of crazy and interesting. I also gave a talk similar to this to a client, the CEO, and him and his creative director were very quiet during my presentation. And then when I was done, they both looked at each other, and the CEO said, "I'm just completely covered in goosebumps." So that's what I intend to hopefully do to this for you guys today. Here's us staring through this portal at this entire new universe. And like, what is this universe made of? Is literally anything we can possibly imagine. And like, we're at the precipice of this, and that's where we stand right now. And I'll just show you an example of how this came into play for me. Okay, so I decided that, oh wait, I didn't decide. My little girl has a fairy and the fairy builds things for her on occasion. And I don't really know how it happens, but occasionally I wake up covered in sawdust and also fairy dust. So here's an example of the fairy house that was being built that gets installed under the staircase for her. And here it was, and it was really cool. And it's got like lights and all this cool stuff, and you can't really see, but there's a picture of her using it there. And it was such a hit, and she has all her friends come and see it, that I was thinking, like, because I like to do creative business ideas, I was thinking, okay, what if I can sort of modernize this concept of like a fairy house? And people used to have like doll houses, so why can't I like update that to become like a thing, like almost like a brand? So I started researching the internet for like fairy doors, and I was like kind of making some progress on this. And then I was like, oh yeah, there's this thing called Midjourney and generative AI, and I wonder what it will think of my concept, right? So it's like, this is me and the fairies creative concept asking Midjourney what it can do. And you saw these, and like, these are okay, and these are interesting, but they're not very like modern concepts. I think they're cute, but I think there's availability to modernize this. So this was back in Midjourney v4, and here are my first attempts at the fairy door. Beautiful, incredible, insane, endless varieties of these fairy doors. And I was just like, I did this thing that I always do where I go like this. Oh my God, oh my God. Like, it's like endless. I could go on and on and on. And I just decided I was going to expand on this idea. Let's not just make it a door, let's make it like an entire house. And now I'm seeing things emerge from these concepts. And it's my job then to sort of figure out, like, okay, I get the gist of it. My brain as a human can sort of fill in the gaps, what this is missing, because some of this stuff comes out quite mutated. So I got to work with my additive design skill, making these little fairy widgets, and these are printed out in actually real objects. And then I started researching how to do the fake grass, basically, and this is my first attempt at that. So I could basically copy what has been done in executions like this. And now I'm further honing it and further mutating it and turning it into something that I feel is actually becoming a real thing. And like, you gotta ask yourselves, would you guys consider buying something like this? How about something like this? And now I'm thinking, like, between you guys and me, it's like, that's there's a fairy door on the wall. These are all sold, and you can convert this whole fairy house concept into a real idea. But why stop there? Now let's start to design, because we can, the actual fairies. And how does this apply? My dearest Isla, greetings from the enchanted realms. This was my first try. I was like, told ChatGPT, Midjourney designed the fairy, it designed the note. And I have to say, I'm not gonna read this whole thing, but it is absolutely adorable. And if I was a little girl, I would feel the magic coming out of this. And you see what I mean is that my vague notions within 1 week of trying have become something that could potentially be a viable business. And granted that the generation of the image took only mere seconds after I perfected it, the generation of the note was a first try. I could make one of these for every little girl that purchased my little fairy house. Now that is my introduction to Midjourney. How many of you guys have used Midjourney so far? This guy, you? Okay, so only a few, perfect. All right, so you guys are absolutely in for it. Okay, so Midjourney is like the Apple computer of generative AI in the sense that it is like beautiful, complete. You cannot customize it all that much, but it does an amazing job, and it's the most popular thing for a reason. It's the most easy to use, the most artistically gifted, the most popular. the management of this company is beautiful and amazing. And one of the things they do is every Wednesday, you get to talk to the CEO if you want. I've talked to him 5 times now, and we have some great conversations. Sometimes I literally cannot get him off the phone. And literally, it's an entire universe, endless possibilities. It's not just like these people have a hard time to like understanding that these fairy houses were not just in there somewhere. They were nothing until I conjured them into existence. It's almost like gives me the ability to do magic. It's improving at such a rapid clip that it is impossible to understand where it's going to be in a year, but I can take a guess. And at its core, it's the single best tool for creative exploration ever given to humanity, and it is exactly 1 year old, okay? And it's so easy that, well, you know. All right, so Midjourney is done by prompting the way most all AI stuff is done. And all I can do is imagine a cat with wings, purple fur, stripes like a zebra, a cubist painting, and here is what I get. In my opinion, this is not very good, nor is it very creative, but it really understood the English. It understood what I was trying to say, and it did the job. So if I can literally imagine anything I could possibly think of, then what can we possibly do? And here are some examples of Midjourney quality that I have made and collected in the last year. We are now on Midjourney V5. Look at the photographic quality, the artistic integrity. There's Barbie, except she's a real girl. This cat is absolutely flawless. It is a real kitty cat. Nature, space. This is part of a concept I was working on, and I was like trying to get this white dragon's eye. There it is. Perfect quality. I mean, it looks literally like it came out of a movie, doesn't it? And there's power to that. It does very strange, interesting explorations of things. Here's an example of a fully complete website and a menu that I made for a company. Coachella Jesus, if I want it to be. Here's patterns, repeating patterns. If you stack these next to each other, they repeat, which is great for things like product packaging or even a wallpaper. And look at these products. Look at that bottle. I just was absolutely obsessed with this bottle because I can almost drink it. I can almost taste it. It's the most beautiful bottle of sake I've ever seen. And if like I saw this product on the shelf, I might consider buying it. I mean, would you guys consider buying that? It's not real, right? We could make it real. Look at the detail in these product packages. It's just amazing, and it's so impossible to compete with. And I am kind of the persuasion that if you can't compete with it, you have to join it. Here's a weird one. Products that are so complete that they are appearing in their final advertisements. There is something weird and mysterious and strange to this that I'm trying to get to the bottom of. Just the amount of imagination that is pouring out. Like, look at the, go ahead. Yes, some of them I collected, but yes, most of them I've made myself. Yes. And again, it's like I know 3D developers that would work on such a thing for 6 months, and here it is right before our eyes. And yes, it's not exactly 3D, but if I was a 3D artist, I would most definitely use this to inspire my next creations. Well, again, it's like the simple answer is that I just typed something in and there it was. But the real answer is that I got the feel for how it interprets things. And eventually I can get in these gold veins, which I'll talk about in a minute. And it'll make things exactly like I want, but beyond my imagination. Beautiful double exposures. Look at these shots of nature, absolutely indistinguishable from the real world. I did this one last night. And here's one for Etihad. And there's something quite mysterious about the way it goes. That's exactly like power of this artificial intelligence. Really, it really truly understands the stuff in very extremely mysterious ways. And machine learning people will tell you they don't even understand how it exactly works, but it does. My favorite part about Midjourney and other things is the way that you can combine different ideas to create these like amazing images, this iridescent rice paddy thing and this nudibranch creature and this the fashion that comes out of this is absolutely endless. I can do fashion of anything, any person, styles from the future or the past. And I just go on deep rabbit holes trying to figure out the best possible things to do. Like, you know, we've all seen probably color palette ideas. And here's just like a brilliant new way that Midjourney figured out how to do color palettes. It inserts the image and the color palette here in these interesting ways that are cool. These products, endless products that I could conjure into existence that don't actually exist. More chairs, this is the type of stuff that I do, right? And I go on, I make hundreds of thousands of images like this endlessly to see which works best. It does not exist, but it could. See what I'm saying? All right, and like beautiful logos and vector designs, and we all know, you guys have probably seen amazing infographics. Well, look at the complexity of these, just amazing. I'm mystified by this sometimes as I make this stuff. Brochure catalogs. Has anybody read the book Neuromancer by any chance? Yes. It's about AI, so I was obsessed with it from an early age. And like, there's almost no key art or like concept art for Neuromancer, so I decided to make it. And maybe I'm just gonna keyframe out this entire movie and pitch it to someone. Here's an interesting one. The next one is a synthesis of my own artwork and creations. So I take my own stuff that I've made, I plug it into Midjourney, and I see what it thinks of it. And then I get to just refresh, and these beautiful things come out of it. And I can make this stuff and put it in my own art gallery, and I probably will, and I have. And just again, like these syntheses of different ideas is quite compelling. And it just does a beautiful, amazing job. And now I'm trying this new method of making images where it's only image combinations and no prompts, and it comes out with these weird, psychedelic, beautiful ideas. And I just can't get enough. And I've done, again, like hundreds of thousands of images in Midjourney. I'm one of the people that has the most images of all people using it. And I really can get to the bottom of what I want. Any vision that I have, I can eventually find. But it's not just that I find my own visions, it's that I see where it takes my visions, which usually winds up in a place that's very different from where I started, but I can recognize something that is like amazing. And that is what I do. So here's an analogy. It's the analogy to a calculator. And this kind of comes into play because it's like, oh, should people use Midjourney or not in like college and school? Well, don't we all remember like back in the day when it's like, you're not allowed to use your calculator in 6th grade. And we're like, why not? Like, it's fun and cool and easy. And they're kind of like, oh, maybe you can for this test, maybe you can't for that test. And we're kind of in the exact same position here. But the analogy here is there is a mathematician and he spends all his day doing calculations all day, every day, because calculations are hard to do. And suddenly you give him a calculator and he can now do calculations instantly, which frees his mind up for higher abstractions. And now he can focus on the remedial work is done by the calculator and the big stuff is done by him, and he can really accelerate what he can do conceptually. Yet if you give this calculator to a child, they will write 8008 on there, and that's about it because they don't really know what to do, and then they just put it down. And it's the same exact thing in society with things like Midjourney, is that I often show it to people, and they're like, oh, that's cool, and they make a zebra that's pink, and they're like, we can't really think of anything else to do, and I'm like, perfect, I'll do it. So that being said, I'll show you what most people get up to on Midjourney. We have nonsense, anime, nonsense and more nonsense. This type of stuff, which I can't quite describe, but it's not really watercolor. It's not really anything, but there's a lot of it. Millions and millions of these. Oh, and there's also nonsense and anime. And of course, some people do incredibly important work. So, and my point with that is that it is completely untapped. I see relatively few professionals using it, in part because they're so snooty that they don't want to, they think it's like cheating or something. But like I said, I'm not going to let it pass me by, and I'm going to attempt to use it and figure it out. And it's put me ahead of a lot of people. And, it's like the Assemblyman is like, he has all these people complaining, oh, you wrote the bill with GPT, but like they're all going to be doing it sooner or later anyway. And it's a bit, every technological change will have plenty of people saying like, I don't want to, that's silly. Why should I ride this car when my horse just works fine? And that's totally expected. And I'm simply not going to be one of them. And I encourage you guys not to do that either, because they're always behind. So July 2022 to now, it just moved from something that initially, I saw it. When it first started coming out, I saw what this could potentially be. And yes, it came out kind of crusty and weird, and there was a lot of weird mutations. But I was just like, I bet this can be something. And it turned out I was right, because the improvement this is what the improvement has been in a single year, okay? Like V1, V2 were freak shows. I showed up at V2 when it was beta. V3 started to get interesting. V4 was like a revelation. That's where I did my little fairy houses. V5 came out a couple of months ago, and now we're at V5.1. And here is what the trajectory looks like. Do you guys remember seeing the Swag Pope by any chance? Who saw that? Anybody? This guy. He did too. This was a viral sensation, and the Swag Pope fooled people, right? Because it looks real and it feels real and everything looks real. And that's where about it happened. And here we are now. And again, here is 2022 to 2023. And where's it going to be in 2024? And I feel like we all have to get ready for that, because it's going to be crazy. For the first time in history, humans can delegate inventiveness and creativity to something that is non-human. And it's cool and amazing. And it's like, we have plenty of creative directors in this world that delegate creativity to people like art directors like me. And now is as if I have hundreds of people working under me. And the slideshow that I'm going to give you, or that I'm giving here, is the work of roughly 20 years of any normal art director done in the last 6 months. Here's an example of why I say Midjourney does such a graceful job, is that, let us say I was asking you to combine these two images, and it's kind of a difficult task. Like, how am I going to combine them? Like, what should I make her outfit that? I don't know. And like, if you give this task to any normal human, they're going to come up with like a variety of responses, some of which will be good and some of which will be bad. But let's see what happens when you ask Midjourney to combine these two images. It's kind of graceful. I mean, it's not perfect, but it did a pretty good job of not making her eyes into giant like coral creatures, and they're not coming out of her mouth, and she's not horribly mutated like some of the other programs. So you can see how if I was going to take a picture of like an apple and a chair and combine those two things, it might give me quite a beautiful apple chair. And that's the type of thing I experiment with all day. Another analogy is to photography. Because okay, how about this? If I go out with my iPhone and I take 15 pictures of anything, I'm probably going to come up with one picture that is maybe kind of decent, but it's still like using an iPhone, so it's not like going to be that amazing. But if I take my professional Sony camera and I go take 10,000 pictures, I can almost guarantee that I'm going to come up with something that is award-winning just by the sheer amount of numbers. And again, this is relevant because it's like, back when we had film photography, we only had like 40 to 80 shots at a time. And now with professional photography, we can take 10,000 shots at a time with no problem. It's the same idea with this. And I'm going to further that analogy by saying, it is like, Midjourney is like taking a camera into the future. Imagine if you could take a camera into the year 2100 and professionally take 10,000 shots of whatever you could possibly find and then bring that back into modern day. How wealthy could you be? And I believe that's like the the tale of Back to the Future 2 is when Biff found the thing from the future and used it. But that's sort of what this is like, is I can find things that exist in the future and they don't exist at all yet. And it's like, okay, what if we just made that into existence? And you saw that cool North Face product that someone might want to buy. And part of what I'm going to talk about here is how we can figure out like what to make. Okay, and this is something I often tell to clients, is that there is a traditional design process by which we design things. And it starts with things like rough ideation over there on the left. Then we make like a mood board. We have a few initial starting ideas, which some of them get cut out. And then slowly, we end up with one final idea, right? And now this is the process that I'm trying to perfect with my clients, is it no longer looks like this. It looks like this. You have an idea which gets amplified into this mass of final looking results. And like, what do you do with them? There's so many. And it's like, we're all trying to figure that out right now. And it's all so brand new. Here's another thing, is that like the ideation process leading into this final result is linear. Usually you have one idea that makes it to the final round, and that's that. But these AI results yield what I call delta results. You get the thing you initially asked for, but then you get all these other weird, crazy directions. And when you present these types of things to creative directors and other people like that, they're often like, oh my God, like, I didn't even think about that. Like, why don't you go down that blue direction more, and we can do the same process and amplify those results too. And I'm gonna show you how to do that as well. Okay, so Midjourney is a diffusion model. And the way it basically works is, imagine you take a picture of anything and you blur it, tell it you can't see what it is anymore. It works in the exact opposite direction of that. So it takes a blurry image and tries to slowly turn it into something based on what your prompt was. And I have an example of this. You see how it started very blurry, and every step it's trying to make decisions and make things more and more crisp. And here's one more example of that. And watch here on the left how her hand forms. And we have hand. Okay, it's becoming a real hand, slowly, surely. It's almost like a dream, isn't it? This is just the way I picture things in my own dreams, that there's like diffuse images that like come into existence and then like blur away again. Okay, so now I'm going to give you another example. Is I think of this as mining, as if this universe of images is like, you can go into this universe and there are gold veins everywhere. And what I try to personally do is seek out where there is gold and then thoroughly mine that cavity for the best possible ideas. And I'll give you an example of the workflow here. Okay, so we're going to design in the next 10 seconds the next best soccer cleat in the world. Here's the first prompt. Notice I'm starting at the top of the funnel, something very unspecific, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get Midjourney. Oops. I'm trying to understand what Midjourney thinks of a soccer cleat to begin with. Okay, so here is what it thinks of a soccer cleat. Again, I can mash my face on the keyboard and get something beautiful. All right, but I'm looking for something more specific. These are a little too messy, so I'm going to modify my prompt. Adidas soccer cleat minimalist designs, and it's still not there yet, but I'm going to do Adidas soccer cleat minimalist design streamlined slip-on. Okay, now I'm getting somewhere, in my opinion. Now I add glossy monochrome, and I can see in the upper right, in the upper right here, I finally found one that I particularly like. This is like a direction that I'm going to pursue. And again, I didn't go into this process trying to find something that I was specifically designing for. I was going to let it inform me, and I'm going to make decisions every step of the way. So then I pick out a few images that I like, and I'm going to try to combine all these together. So as a first experiment, I'm going to shove these things together without a prompt. And here's what it comes up with, something that is vaguely shoe-like. And now I'm going to add the prompt to tell it more specifically what it's looking at. And there we go. I added a big old prompt: futuristic soccer cleat, iridescent, generative design, no laces, slip-on, in the style of light magenta and light bronze, physical rendering, and all the other stuff. And I'm finally getting somewhere, in my opinion. And I'm going to change the prompt slightly again. And now I have a few things that I really like. Okay, now I have a bunch of images that I'm going to try to shove together. Now I have this one in the upper right here, which I liked in the beginning. This middle one's looking good. I like this glossy look, but it was a little too much. I'm going to add the skin of a mola fish, which I know has these like striations on the side, and throw in some shark cartilage on the bottom there. And here's what I ended up getting with all those things. Okay. And now I feel like I'm going to really start getting somewhere by just shoving these three things that I got together. And here, yes. Sure. Yeah, for sure. What I'm doing is I'm taking these three pictures, I'm putting them into Midjourney, into Discord, which is the thing that is using Midjourney runs on presently. And I'm going to copy the URLs from those images into my prompt so that it's referencing those three images as well as my prompt. And then what comes out is these images here, right? So every step of the way, what I'm doing is I'm getting my own personal feedback about what I like by taking the image that I like, putting it back into the prompt, and then just sort of like feedbacking it into these loops that eventually start yielding results. And now when I'm really at this part, I start to feel like I'm in one of the gold veins. And when I'm in the gold veins, what I'm going to do is I'm going to thoroughly excavate that gold vein by making as many of these as possible. And sometimes I go through thousands and thousands and thousands. And I eventually pick out my three favorite, which are this, this, and this. And one more. Boom. So really, in the last couple days in this little exercise, I've done something that is like normally going to take a team of people at Adidas months to build, and they're not going to come up with thousands of designs. They're probably going to come up with one design. And you guys can possibly imagine the power in that, because we can come up with products that appear final, right? And that is very strange and very weird. And my whole point in this is that if you can come up with designs that appear final, you can actually test them on consumers like yourselves, and you can decide who wants to buy which soccer cleat because we have the final images before us. And with that type of market research, you can super direct the type of products that you want to build in a way that is completely unprecedented and completely disruptive, and frankly, kind of amazing if you ask me. So here's another thing, is the concept of like design discovery. And here's some of these things, is like classic designs that have yielded billions of dollars in revenues. The inside of the Herschel bag, for example, is this classic pinstripe red and white. The Mercedes logo, or the simple pattern on the Louis Vuitton bag. So I try to find these things in the design and capitalize on them, because they simply appear sometimes and I have to know what I'm looking at. So I did work for a startup nails company that was trying to do nails that were like out of this world, like no one's ever seen. And I feel like they came to the right guy, because here are some of my super high fashion nail designs. And these are incredibly unusual and unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. And they are just interesting and cool. And like, because these are all original designs, I can show these to some like nail designer. And of course, this is like crazy and complicated, but it's possible to make these things. And here's like an example of something that came out of this process that I felt was really compelling. It's like, you can definitely see a celebrity walking down the carpet with this type of design and getting a lot of attention. Subtleties, like look at the way her makeup is right under her eyebrow here, right there. And the way it only comes up to like halfway up, it's like subtle, but it's interesting. And it's like the type of thing that you pitch to people that are making makeup, and just like for new designs and architecture. This thing is insane for architecture. It makes the most beautiful, amazing designs. And something as simple as that little gold ribbon that's going under the countertop can be a look that like people will buy. And the fashion, so many looks are brand new inside these fashion images. And like, you know, I see things like, just like, look at the little thing on her knee there, just that little thing. And like, you could imagine that like, oh yeah, people have started to wear that thing. When like fashion trends emerged, those things turned into millions and then billions of dollars. Again, more synthesis of my own artwork. And these are those things that I could theoretically build. Even that wooden door, I talked to a CNC person about making that, and it is theoretically possible. Here's a couple new products that just came out of the blue. I mean, could you not imagine parents buying that teddy chair? Parents are the people that are willing to spend the most money in this planet, and like, there is an unlimited amount of ability to capitalize on products that are just like this. Check out this cool new bench I accidentally designed, and like more architecture stuff. And I've done recessed lighting like this. And I mean, I've never seen anything like that, but imagine like making a lobby that looks like this right image. It would be cool and interesting. And how about these? It's like, leaves me speechless sometimes. Like, you could definitely see someone walking around New York with that kick-ass backpack on the left. And I accidentally made these just last night when I was like showing Mark how to make stuff. And it does a lot of these beautiful things too. And like, I now know this is the type of thing that additive design can make, because they have 3D printers now that are like the size of that desk as a cube. And you could just make this whole thing in the course of a week and just put a piece of glass on it and sell it for, I don't know, $20,000. Here's another funny thing is some of the best design discoveries that I have made ever have been when I have like accidentally screwed something up. So I was like writing in some sentence and I was trying to program something, and all of a sudden it screwed up, and now it's like a bunch of glitch stuff everywhere. But I was like, damn, that glitch looks like really cool and interesting. And this is like the ultimate machine for making discoveries in that way. And I'll give you an example. As I was trying to make an iris, boom. One of the most stunning images I felt that I ever made. And you can see that I was trying to make the flower and how it sort of integrated the flower into the iris, because it made a mistake and thought that the iris, I was talking about the iris of the eye, but it was staring back at me. And I was like, oh God, it's like incredible and amazing and interesting. And I started doing that same process to make some of these other beautiful, trippy images, try to figure out what I could do with these things. And this project I was doing, it was like, it's like I started to make these. I'm like, what can I do with this? This is almost describing some abstract romance novel about like lost love and stuff like that. And it's like, what if I could take this idea to some publisher and try to figure out ways to make abstract art out of like the latest like bestseller book, and like what can be done with that? This is like another thing I'm actively pursuing. And here's a note on photorealism. I was going to reference a guy, Mike Brown, that gave this talk. Psych, that guy's not real. Accidentally made him up too. These are also examples of incredible photorealism. And we are about to be inundated with pictures in this world that we cannot tell the difference if they're real or not, and what that means for our society. I'm not even going to get into that right now, but I did take on one project for a publisher, and here's what it was. We all remember reading textbooks when we were like in 6th grade and 4th grade and stuff, and we were talking about the Revolutionary War. And I personally remember seeing like just kind of like the flat images, which are representing the art at the time of the style of art at the time, which is not very compelling to me because people weren't very good artists back in 1700s for the most part. But what if I could portray scenes from history in a way that we want to see them as determined by the market, which is flat scenes from a movie? And here's an example of that. There's John Adams at the table with young John Quincy. And I got the lighting just right because I did this picture about 10,000, no, I did it about 1,000 times to make sure I got it right. And this is the one I picked. And now here's a selfie with George Washington crossing the Delaware. And then there's examples of like peasants from medieval times back when no cameras existed. And we have like, prior to this, we would have to actually film the movie, which is a billion-dollar endeavor to get this type of shot. But now we can get it with almost no effort. And it's incredibly, incredibly disruptive. Here's the picture from the moon landing. And I made sure that even the tubes on the bottom of his suit matched perfectly with what it was with reality, and such a thing as possible with in painting. like, with the photo, those notes on photorealism, my dad is an architect and I've talked to other architects. Now I consult for architects because one of the things that happens with them is that they tend to make renders of, let's say, a lobby or a living room, and they have a recurring problem where their client is just like, I don't really get it. And they're like, oh, it's just a render. I know you don't get the feel of the scene, but, and they have this problem communicating visually to the client, but look at these renders. Just perfect. And the feel of the light streaming into the house is now something that the client could see. And this is much more likely for a client to be like, yes, make me one just like that. It can do like sketches, concepts of new styles of buildings, interiors. Here's one of my favorite rooms that I accidentally made. And it's an Airbnb room. And it's got the art on the walls as part of this image got generated as one whole piece. And that's just like incredible power there. And as a part of the same project, here's a modern version of Thoreau's cabin, where I synthesized Thoreau's ancient cabin with some modern execution. And here's what I came up with. Like, would you guys stay in this room or that room? I've seen entire hotels base their entire designs off just cool rooms like this, where every room was different. And I could this afternoon make a hotel just like that. If any of you guys want to start a business, hit me up. And just like more interiors, and like it invents these scenes that I could just be like, yeah, I want to be there. Make me that. It's as simple as that now. Imagine you're a writer, right? And you're in Hollywood or something, and you're trying to think of like a story, or maybe you even have the basis of a story and you want to just flesh this out, and you need imaginative properties to help your mind do it. This image struck me more than almost any of the other ones. This girl, she's on the streets here of New York, and her eyes tell a story. And I can make that story right now based on this picture. Like, I'm just gonna freeform. She's a child of divorce, and she's like trying to make her way through the streets, and she's got like a chip on her shoulder, and she meets a person, and the person does this and that and this. You see, I've started the story already just based on a picture I've generated. So, and then here's like another similar one. The movie is called Matilda or something, and that's her. And like, we can flesh this whole thing out. Here's more stories I can flesh out. Like, look at that one. Again, this is like an accident over on the right. It's the beginning of a Pixar movie, and she is making these balls of yarn for some specific purpose. Just more incredible scenes. Girl on a toad, I don't know why. Here's this Pixar image, and I just want to emphasize that getting to this point for any normal Pixar artist takes a team of 20 working full time to get just this image. And here we have it right here, right? And it's just incredibly, incredibly disruptive power. And we all don't know quite what to do with this yet. And this is one of the reasons that designers are turning away from this, is because it's so disruptive that they think it's threatening their jobs. But again, they don't realize that using this power, they can amplify their own abilities to like tremendous extents and find new opportunities. Look at my little kitty cat. I just love it. Should we make like a cartoon? Okay, so, and this is part of the crux of the matter for me, is I'm trying to figure out, like, a lot of people are trying to figure out, and they ask me like, well, yeah, well, what do you do with these images, by the way, a distinction. I don't call these things pieces of artwork. I call these images, because art is something that people do, and images is something that these things do, although I admit that this is a silly distinction because it looks like art to me and it fools the regular person. So why should I make this distinction at all? I don't really know. I'm just trying to go with what people are saying right now. But imagine you want to test a product, okay? You have to get to the point where you can show this product to people before they can give you any feedback at all. If you give them a sketch of a lemon, they don't know what to do with it. But if you give them, however, a final image, they might tell you what they think about that thing, right? But to get to that final image, of course, you have to go through all those design phases to get to that point. It's going to take a team of 15 people to get there. Well, not anymore. This is another image that truly affected me. It's pretty simple. It's an image above a Starbucks counter showing their latest green tea mochaccino or whatever it is. And I don't know about you guys, but I can almost taste it. I know basically what it tastes like. It tastes pretty good. And I would consider buying that if it was just like put on the menu. And the point is that if you put like food, when we look at food, I know as a designer that it is most of the way it tastes is the way it looks. Our brains have made decisions about the food prior to us actually tasting it. We decide if it looks good or not. Would you guys say that this looks pretty tasty? Yeah, it does. I mean, like, and it's instead of engineering this drink up to the point where I could then taste it and decide if it tastes good, why don't you just show me the image, tell me if I want to buy it or not. And if I say that I do, a company like Starbucks could simply reverse engineer this image into whatever they think it should taste like or whatever people say it should taste like, a completely backwards way of doing things. And that's what the crux of the matter is reverse engineering. Reverse engineering these images into something real. And I want you to try to, this is perfect because it's about lunchtime and you guys are hungry. I want to see if I can actually make you guys hungry. Yum. Delicious. Here's my new types of sushi. I don't know exactly what it is, but yeah, give me a sushi chef in here. You could probably deconstruct this and tell me. Look at my new types of soup, my mash. I actually had a client here at NYC and he's like, dude, I got the product pictures back for like the online menu and they look terrible. Can you make me a better version of this eggplant parmesan? I was like, hell yes, I can. And I made some of the most tasty looking eggplant parmesan you ever seen. Check out my cake with edible flowers. And let's get more inventive. Here's my next new breakfast thing. I think it's an egg with, I don't know, some sort of like crusty, bacony stuff mixed in, but I definitely want one. How about this thing? It's $700, but looks pretty good. I don't exactly know what any of these things are, but you know, again, like you give this to a chef and the chef can take, I mean, like we've all seen menus with pictures on them. That's how we make the decisions about what we want. Like, would you guys pick any of this stuff to eat? The point is, if we would pick this to eat, then they can just make it for us and decide what it's actually made out of. Here's another one of my favorites. I just love this thing. It's like a honey egg caviar mix. God knows what it tastes like, but it looks pretty good. As this stuff, this crab cake over broccoli with some sort of tzatziki sauce. I don't know. But again, I just emphasize that if I could run through 10,000 of these images with some chef, he could probably design an entire menu based on this stuff and just simply decide what it's made out of and figure that out, because we've already tested this on people and people might say that that's what they want to eat. So that's what we'll make. Design qualifications. A note on this is that, here's another scary one, is that like, imagine how many designers, how many meetings and how much money is being poured into making the perfect look for the Apple car, right? Well, I'm gonna try it. There it is. And you guys wanna buy the Apple car? I like that one on the right pretty well. And I just know that cars is one of the thing that takes the most possible effort from the most amount of people. And I work for Faraday Future, and I can tell you it was a 2,000 person startup company, all trying to get stuff like this and this, the next hottest BMW on the planet. And they went through billions, seems like, design iterations to try to design this car, but they should have just hit me up because I'll design you 10,000 and we'll just test them on consumers and see what they like the best. And that's your answer, because like the free market's gonna choose for you. And that's like the new way of doing things. I mean, like, I don't want to get into Elon and the Cybertruck, but maybe I could have done that a little differently. I think it's so crazy looking. Here, I'll just design you some Chanel shoes that don't exist. How about this new type of Apple Watch? And you can see how this is so important for you guys to see, because the ability to pitch these new types of ideas is going to become intrinsically linked with using products like Midjourney. And when I go into like, oh, that's another thing about my industry is that people are like, okay, we got a pitch coming. So you guys gonna have to work over the weekend. We need 4 concepts by Monday. And everyone's like, oh, my weekend's gone. But now we can actually deliver those concepts and make them beautiful and interesting in much shorter amount of time. But it's not just 4. Now you might get 15. Matter of fact, the problem I'm dealing with Midjourney personally is that I over deliver now. And there's too many choices, which is beginning to paralyze people. So I got to cut it down. Okay, so that's Midjourney. And I want to just briefly tell you about some of the other stuff. Has any of you guys ever heard of Stable Diffusion by any chance? Cool. You used it? Yeah, see, it's harder to use. It's much more like the PC because it is, unlike a Mac, it is kind of sloppy and it's open source. But what you can do is plug in all these different models to get different effects out of it. And it has mysterious new capabilities that are coming out all the time. And like a PC, it is, you can maybe put 2 of them together and now you can add wheels to the bottom of it and make it go real fast. And like, what does that mean? And that's sort of the way this is going. So this is the automatic 1111 interface, which is where you use Stable Diffusion. And oh yeah, well, I should mention that Stable Diffusion is like Midjourney, but just a completely new way of doing it with a different model. And it's like, there's more dials and things, and it's like a little less user-friendly, but more customizable. And now it's coming along. You can make images that are very good in Midjourney. I mean, in Stable Diffusion, I like the dig on Midjourney over there, which is cool. It does incredible photorealism sometimes. And another thing about it is that like you can plug in these custom things, which I'll talk about in a second. And like, this is a model that only does this one actress and it does it incredibly well. And some of the images that come out of that one are just look exactly like her. And I often put images of her actual picture next to the fake picture and I quiz people to see if they can tell, and they often cannot tell the difference. There's these cool new ways of connecting like node-based programs to figure out how best to get these images. But the most powerful thing about this is that you can do these custom models and LoRa's. Okay, so I'll talk about this in a second again, but at the end of last year, this paper came out called Dream Booth, and it was by Google and others. And what you can do is you can take a checkpoint, which is the full model of how you make images, and you can train something specific with it. And for example, you can train a model to recognize yourself. And then if you put in the right keyword, you'll make a ton of images with yourself in it. But it's not just yourself, it's yourself as an illustration, yourself as like a barbarian character with huge muscles, a gender switch version of yourself, and all sorts of other stuff. And soon after that, a new thing came out called a LoRa, which was a tiny version of this exact type of model. And now we have tons of LoRa's that do specific things. And here's an example. This LoRa only does purest white images. Just beautifully done, interesting concepts. Here's one that only does 70s style photography, and it does it incredibly well. And this is one, and I have to go through these LoRa's, and I have laugh attacks where I'm laughing so hard that I cannot breathe. And this one is a LoRa for shitty fan art. And all it does is this. And it's so bad, but it's just funny and interesting. And then there's other LoRa's that do things that like Midjourney can definitely not do. These look strange, but what these are models that wrap around a 3D model, right? So if you have any sort of 3D model, you can generate your own face and wrap it around it. And again, these things took a long time before, and now they're quite easy. Here's one that only does cubism, which I thought was pretty cool and interesting. And there was a famous one recently that learned how to do QR codes in weird and mysterious ways, which is cool. I think this is kind of a fad, but what came out of this is that this LoRa uses like the difference in brightness and contrast to make sure that the QR code recognizes what it's seeing. And people have used this to apply it to other styles of images, which are weird and crazy and cool. And the thing about Stable Diffusion, unlike Midjourney, is it will take these weird leaps in random directions and do unpredictable stuff. And all of a sudden there'll be a sensation because all of us will get wind that this particular model can do a particular thing, and we all start experimenting with what to do with it. And here's an example of the Dream Booth paper I was talking about earlier. And here's my little girl. And what I wanted to do was create a model that integrated her into it. So I took about 20 images and labeled them in a specific way and put it through this Google Colab program, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But here is what it came up with. And this is my little girl in different versions of illustration. There's her as a barbarian and other cool poses. But then I did something weird. What if I was to imagine my then 6-year-old girl as a teenager? And so I tried it. And there she is as a teenager. I showed this to my dad and he ran out of the room screaming because he said he couldn't handle it. And that's kind of like the state of these things, is there's such odd, mysterious ways. And I could even make models of her as like an older woman, and she gets to see that for the first time in history. And it's very strange. And you can also take different models and merge them together. And here's an example of me merging this teenage Isla model with one that does fantasy artwork. And here's the outcome. And I was thinking of a use for this. I'm just jamming here, but it's like, people have this image of themselves that they may or may not be happy with. And I was imagining this type of therapy where you basically trained a model on a person that was having an image problem and basically made images of that person that were like slightly nicer than or like a slightly better version of themselves, so they could have as a photographer, I'll tell you, people do not like, especially older people, do not like pictures of themselves. But what if we could make the ideal picture of a person and show them that picture in some sort of therapeutic environment? They might begin to develop like a better self-image of themselves over time. And it's something I'm like exploring with some of my therapist friends, and we're gonna attempt it. So you see, I'm on the cusp of like trying all these random things with all these random ideas. Because again, I do that thing where we learn stuff like this, and then I'm like, oh my God, that means, and then I got my AI partner do the same thing, and we create like circles where we paste many circles trying to figure out what to do with all this stuff. This singer is named Bryce Vine, and I know his manager. So we decided, what if we use the Dream Booth model to train a model of him? And here's what comes out of it. Here's Bryce Vine's models. And these are kind of old at this point, but one of the more interesting things about it was that he had a PDF that came with him and images just like this. None of these are his. These all just came off Pinterest. But what if I could take his entire like catalog of 100 images that were designed to represent him and train a model on that? And here's what I came up with. Brand new original designs that are based on him and that are exclusively for him. And again, it's just like interesting and cool. And he could use these for like any types of stuff he wants, where it would traditionally take designers a lot to do this. We can cycle through these very quickly. Again, it's very disruptive. Here was one that has an ominous name. Anybody heard of ControlNet yet? Okay, this one came out about 4 months ago, and it has actual applications. And one of the problems with Midjourney is that, let us say that I wanted to model this room, but I wanted to change it to something cooler. You cannot do that with Midjourney because Midjourney will generally always come up with something unpredictable. But what if we could stick to the model and simply change that? And that's what ControlNet does. Take the Mona Lisa, for example. Right? And what if I just wanted to make like a light sketch of something, which is something that I tend to do, is I make lots of sketches of various like woodworks and things. And like, you know, I can basically imagine what it is going to come out to. But what if I could do that better? A completely new way of doing things. Now what I can do is I can create a rough sketch of someone's room and basically change it to anything I want. And as you can see, this doesn't have to be a samurai. This could be a little girl, an older woman, or whatever I aim to do. And that has immediate application for like interior designers. So I can just take a picture of your room and change it in multiple ways until you find one that you like. And now getting even crazier, here's one of the latest things to come out. It's called a DragGAN. And I will show you what it does. It's a research paper that was penned by all these people. And let's take a look. Literally take points and adjust them to completely change the image. Watch what it can do for fashion. Pretty wild and crazy, and that's coming out soon. So I will be on it. AI animations, this is something I did early experimentation with. I actually have a reel about this, but you can basically take these images and animate them just a little bit. And then there's programs called this one's called Deforum, which does these kind of like animations that in my opinion is a bit of a gimmick and it doesn't last too long. Here's an experiment that I was doing with my guy, and like you could see the weird, strange, dreamlike qualities of AI animation and how things just like morph and change in these unpredictable and strange ways. This was an input video. So what I did is I inputted a video of me moving around the inside of my car. Watch the steering wheel turn right about there. See it? But I told it, you're not looking at a car. You're looking at the psychedelic landscape full of female faces, and it's doing its best to figure out what that means. And that's how to come up with these weird psychedelic things. Here's one that's a little more clear. And something else that I thought was kind of cool. Right? So basically now I've seen a lot of experimentation of people taking just, you know, things that they film and turning it into things like anime movies that are quite convincing. Here's one last one that I did, which I thought was really beautiful and nice. Oh yeah, one more. Just through the streets of New York. I mean, this could have been a video. I think that the time for this psychedelic stuff has passed a little bit, and here's like another example of like what we did for Bryce about 4 months back, but watch the way on his own trained model, he does this strange arm movement and watch what appears on the wall. Did you see that? He appeared on his own wall and then slowly turned towards the camera, and it was a completely unpredictable thing. And now we have these things that are, you can take one image and convert it into a movie. And here's one of the latest ones, which is a bit of a freak show. Yeah, because that's what flowers do. They explode on impact. But here's a better version of that using a thing called Gen 2. And this guy made basically this entire movie by animating still frames. All he did was put in a still frame and describe what it's looking at, but it's pretty damn convincing. And you can imagine this time next year, a physical movie might come out being made of this stuff. Can you believe that? This is hard to believe. And here's another example of how good Gen 2 is now. I inputted this image of clouds, and then I'm like, these are moving clouds. Let's see what you got. Fairly convincing. There's another new one. This isn't all that new, but it's called Absinthe. So if I program the first frame of this owl and describe what it is, it can then do things like this. And I can change its appearance, or how about making this painting move? Pretty creepy. And then there's the combination of AI models. So I trained a Midjourney model, or I trained a Stable Diffusion model based on Midjourney images to try to make this guy move. And it basically worked. Here's another last thing I'll talk about is the neural radiance fields and how that applies. Is now you have these, you can basically do these yourself. You can take your iPhone with certain programs and basically film this chair in this specific way, and it'll create a completely finished 3D model that you can orbit around in these crazy cool ways. Any guys seen these yet? Neural radiance fields. And this is actually a super meaningful thing because of what NVIDIA is doing with it. Here's another couple examples. It's like bullet time on steroids. This dog. Sleeping dog into neural radiance field. All right, here's the last thing I'll talk about. So I'm going to get slightly futuristic and make a prediction. Midjourney did an amazing job of making this scene, and it fully understood this scene, but it does not yet understand what is behind that couch, right? But you can imagine that we're not that far off. If we can take this image and basically it understands what it's looking at, it could probably understand soon what's behind the couch. And the idea is that it's going to soon take a slightly different image of that same thing and turn it into a neural radiance field, so that basically you can stand in a VR environment and basically be like, I want to see a fully designed room. And then you'll see the room forming in front of you. And you're like, no, different couch, that's good. Okay, I'm gonna turn to the wall, Picasso. Okay, I'm gonna turn over here, give me a window of New York City. And you can imagine in this way how you could basically start to craft entire universes made from purely generative images, making animals, scenes from movies, games, whatever you want, and basically live inside these universes of people's making. And I don't think it's too far of a stretch, because some people already choose to live in worlds like World of Warcraft. Imagine if you could make your own universe in this VR environment, and the VR is haptic and you have all this stuff, and it's going to be a brave and crazy new world. And AI implications are going to rapidly change in the near term, and that's what I'm paying attention to. And my last slide here is implications. It's highly disruptive. Specific models can basically suit any design need if you train them properly. And you can make designs that appear final and then test those things on actual consumers in an effective way. And companies that are unprepared for the coming AI changes are going to leave themselves extremely vulnerable, unlike you guys who know all this stuff now. And I would just definitely say that artistic taste is highly important, because most people don't have it, and garbage in, garbage out, as my friend here says. And AI 3D models, which are probably coming out within this year, maybe next year, are going to have a major impact on our world, and you guys got to be ready for that. And so we're going to do a workshop tomorrow, and all you guys have to do is sign up for Discord if you haven't already, and I'll give you the channel link tomorrow. Thank you, guys.
All right, guys, just to be clear, so tomorrow, Chris is going to we're going to put you into separate teams, and Chris is going to give you a challenge. We're going to walk through. He's going to teach you how to do this. So when you walk away when you walk away from here, effectively, you'll be able to do this. And he's going to take you through a whole process. Each team will be given a different persona to design towards, right? With regards to that persona's demographic profile and psychographic profile. And we'll be giving you different product concepts. They could be a sake bottle or a pair of sneakers. They can be a car or perhaps a house. I'm going to leave that to Chris. And then each team will create on their own. And Chris is going to teach you how to do that. So you'll walk out of here with the skill set. I don't know if you'll be as good as Chris, but you'll walk out here with the skill set to get there. We're going to email you, right? We're going to email you a PDF that's going to give you directions, but everybody's going to need to sign up for Midjourney and Discord, and we're going to work through it. And then we're assigning actual, the personas, for the most part, will be people that are here, including myself and Liz. Chris, I guess you'll be a persona. So ultimately, we'll know whether or not you're actually designing correctly towards that persona. So it's going to be
design stuff, and then that's so again, trying to
tomorrow also, Garrett Sloan from Ad Age is joining us, and Garrett's going to break down what major corporations from Coca-Cola to BMW are doing right, and also what they're doing wrong in AI today. So thanks for coming. Sorry we ran a little bit late. Oh, does anybody have any questions? Sorry, Chris. All right, does anybody have any questions before we go?
Mhm. Yes. Upscalers are so good now that you can like get down like so deep that like you can see the individual atoms that make a movie. So even though Midjourney doesn't upscale things super big, there are programs that do that extremely well now. And they're becoming like drag and drop. You just drag them in there and they'll do it for you. Are you saying that like maybe there's this much and you want like this much? Ah, Midjourney now has a way that you can zoom, like you make any image and then zoom out step by step until you get a much bigger image and it's filling in the gaps. And it's really interesting and cool. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do now. Go ahead. Nice. Mm-hmm. Sure. Specifically, they wanted on the screen backgrounds that they needed is they wanted like, first of all, beautiful images of just clouds and like nature and backgrounds and their own airplane wing integrated into that, factoring that like it was going to be expensive to actually take those shots and film them and stuff. So we put together like a package of those that go behind their program. But then like as part of my design work, I also did the motion graphics for their screens. And then we just did some other stuff to impress them. Like we redesigned like their lobby and like, that with the baller lobby, that goes in the airport and stuff like that. And we're like working with them like right now. So that's like an ongoing project. But yeah, it was a lot of just like image generation and then getting those images to move in 3D in a cool way. Yeah. Go ahead. Can you repeat that? Okay, so there's a lawsuit that came out recently, which I think is actually really good. And it says that if I cannot copyright any of these images that just come right out and like, I can't just like slap a copyright on them. And I must significantly change the image or have my own inception of what I wanted to do in order to get a copyright on it. And I think it's the right decision and for a lot of reasons. And here's one of them is that if I were so inclined, I could make 1 billion images of every conceivable thing that I could ever imagine on this planet and basically put a copyright on all of those things. And then I could reverse image search anything that anyone's ever made and say, I already made that image, sucker, you owe me a bunch of money. And that would be super detrimental and bad. And I know this because one day in March of this year for a project, we did 600,000 images on a render farm in a single day for a single purpose. So I think it was the right decision, even though like technically negatively impacts people like me who are trying to make these things. But I'm not trying to copyright any of this stuff. What I'm trying to do is get ideas and use those ideas to convey ideas so that I can make things on my own. It's like standing on the shoulders of these ideas that exist is where the true power is, in my opinion. Does that answer your question? Cool. Anybody else? Of course. So is the question like, let us say that I'm like, I want to make a new Picasso. So I just type in Picasso's name and make a Picasso art. Is that about what you're asking? Can you repeat the question maybe? Well, I think maybe I'll try to answer your question is that like, I think, and this is like a whole different discussion we could go on for an hour about, but there are ethical and unethical uses of AI stuff. And one of the things that I think is unethical is to just simply use one person's name and say, make me something like the work that that guy does. Because that's not useful to me and it's not original and it's not interesting because that guy already has that work. However, if I combine the works of like a ton of different people to synthesize a new thing, it's virtually no different from what we do anyway. Like designers like me go on Pinterest for inspiration all the time. And we're basically standing on the shoulders of other designers to one up each other and create the next best thing. So the synthesis of new ideas is something that's not new. It's just the speed at which we can do it and the way we can assess it that is new and interesting. So like, again, I don't want to be personally accused of copying anyone else's artwork. And that's why the work that I do is I try to make it as original as possible, which is quite easy because the stuff that comes out of this is so different and so original most of the time. And again, like one of the reasons it does so good at anime is because all anime virtually looks very similar, right? So it's the ability to train any models on anime is quite easy because the amount of stuff that's already out there is vast.
It's worth noting that these two questions. Kind of, let's look up. Do you know the class? So look up Chihuly and there's an artist. There's inspiration from Chihuly to create a likeness. And this reference. So to how the generative AI predicts where the light should be. Those are going to be lawsuits. So there are laws that have followed trademark. So transformative issues are going to come up. And to reinterpret.
Any other questions? Go ahead. So basically they're training off like massive data sets, and the data sets are pretty much every image that is on the internet, right? So some people are like, hey, you used like my image on the internet. Well, you put it out there. And like, frankly, like I even requested that all my art go into Midjourney because I want to see what other people can make with it. And like my art style is pretty varied, but if I was an artist that only had one particular art style that was famous, I might have more of a problem with that. And I might raise a stink that might reach, a lawsuit, right? And that has happened. But I'm just going to circumvent that whole issue by not doing abusive stuff that is like infringing on other people's things. And it's really no different from things like Photoshop, where I could technically Photoshop one person's face into another person's body, and that is abusive stuff. And like you can abuse any one of these things. And I look forward to legislation that makes sure that this stuff cannot be abused. Does that answer you?
I mean, so basically the information proving itself.
I believe that is the case, although Midjourney is a private company and it's not open source, so they don't exactly tell about how they do things. But I know that they train their models on these massive data sets, and the data sets are being improved, yes, by the images that they themselves make. And now they're the world's largest repository for images on the planet. So yeah, it's like self-improving.
The data is training the AI. Images are trained, but then people are using this to learn which prompts do what. So that's like a big part of Discord.
Yeah.
Can you get into like,
Oh, I mean, like one of the most amazing parts about Discord is that you can see what other people are doing. Right. And that's one of the reasons I entered these big rooms. People kept kicking me out of their chat rooms because I was personally flooding it with like my own prompts. And that's why I started my own series of servers to deal with that. But I love the fact that it's open source and it's not hidden. And if you see an image, you can basically figure out what makes that image and then do it yourself. And it's like people are standing on each other's shoulders constantly now at these rates that we'd like never seen before. And it's like, again,
You'll take what you described to me this time. Like, you'll see something this.
Yeah.
Catch your attention.
that's right. So I create this like library of how to get certain looks, but personally, I only keep the stuff that appeals to me. For example, like a very distinct Polaroid photography look, I'll be like, there it is. And I'll put it in my little library for like future use. And then to combine what made that look with some other random thing. And you can just like mix and match stuff in these cool, amazing ways that go very quickly.
Tomorrow,
Yes, for sure. Yeah. My guy. Mhm. Yes. That is called interrogation. And I use that all the time. And I'll show you how to use it tomorrow too. Midjourney actually has a tool that does that. It's called Describe. So you drag a single image into this Describe module and it spits out the prompt about how you make it. And then it offers you to put that back in to see what it makes. But I'll show you more efficient ways of getting the exact type of image that like you can get in. And it doesn't have to just be like AI images that you do that with. It could be anything. Take a picture of anything in the real world and break it down into a prompt for later use. It's pretty cool and weird.
So if
Yeah.
there's one more question, Steve, one last question. This organized pizza for everybody.
Oh, nice.
Like Steve. If you have any other questions or comments, you can send them to us. We'll see you tomorrow. Keep the date tags. So last question.
Go ahead.
So I want
Sure.
all
Well, I mean, let's try to answer that. It's just that like, you just, I mean, I stand on the shoulders of other designers and other designers have made stuff that appeals to me. And soon I have developed like my own language about like what I personally want to like to see. And I see, and then I just have like, and then the more you do that, the more you have new ideas. Your mind is synthesizing these things you've seen here and things you've seen there. And then you ask yourself, like, I wonder if I could do that. And when I made those like origami sculptures, it was like a journey where I was just like, I have this basic idea and then I slowly have to learn one program and maybe this other program could do it and it did it. And now I have to figure out this last piece and it's this like huge process. And, you know, initially I made one for a projection map and I was like, wait, this actually looks good with no projection map on it. It's just the white paper with the origami and like thus a new form of art was born, you know? So it's like, if it was me and I was starting out, I'd just be like, comb Pinterest as much as you can to see what other artists are doing and see what appeals to you. And I know that like what a PhD is you study the science and you make your own little bump in like, and make your own little mark in that. So artists, it makes sense that artists would do the same thing as they would enter some field, let's say it's generative design and make a special generative design like table that matches the aesthetic that they like. Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like there's so much inspiration out there and some things appeal and some things don't. I would just get involved with every single image I could possibly find and then use Midjourney to make your own stuff too. Cool. Well, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
don't. This.